The deception, the large magic circle burst into existence before him, churning out yellow-tinged energy in waves that, had Makarov been there, would have shocked the guild master. Anyone sensitive to the levels of energy being released would be astonished if they compared it to Elfman's previous magical ability. It wasn't just a little bigger. It was almost as if he were a completely different person. His newfound magical power had increased far beyond what he had anticipated. At the moment, his ability rivaled that of his older sister in her takeover form, something very few within the guild could boast of. Brayag. As Elfman's scream deepened and became more bestial, his body was also undergoing several changes. His upper torso was rapidly expanding, becoming more bulky as the transformation continued. His legs were steadily swelling, taking on the appearance of a feline. Judging by the large paws forming in place of his feet, they resembled those of big cats. His spiky hair thickened and stood out, forming a mane around his head. His skin tone lightened substantially, and red fur began to grow, covering his torso. In half a minute, the transformation was complete. Elfman was back to his original height, though a few centimeters taller than before, and his new form was revealed. His body structure was that of the beast Elfman had obtained from his disastrous first job, but there were some marked differences. For one thing, his feet were made from those of his Werediger. That is, they retained their feline appearance. His body was almost entirely covered in scales, a feature of his recent acquisition of lizardmen, while his arms were composed of stone. His eyes gleamed in the clouds of dust. All in all, he cut short the imposing figure. Naruto sighed, his hair rippling in the breeze. He still needs to work on his transformation speed. 16 seconds might be acceptable in Earthland, but there's always the chance of meeting someone with great speed. Not bad, Elfman. I mean, if I were a turtle. He called haughtily, testing Elfman's anger. A low growl rumbled from the transformed mage, earning a hidden grin from Naruto. Now that you're done, let's see your hand-to-hand skills. He relaxed his stance and rummaged in his weapon pouch, nostalgia growing stronger as his fingers brushed the pages of a book. He paused briefly before pulling it out, revealing it to be the latest edition of his bingo book collection. It was something he'd started compiling roughly half a year before leaving the Elemental Nations. With so many memories of various shinobi in his head, he tended to forget a number of jutsu. To avoid this, he collected bingo books to learn more about the elements that made up his body, as well as to review the jutsu he couldn't recall. Elfman, who had been charging toward his sensei, stopped when he saw Naruto engrossed in a book, which was wide open. Without another thought, he leaped toward him and swung his left arm back to deliver a blow to his elbow. Whereas before he had tried to rouse Naruto to take him seriously, now he had learned to exploit any advantage his opponents gave him. It wasn't the most honorable thing to do, but a man has to do what a man has to do to win, according to Naruto. Of course, it wouldn't be realistic for Elfman to assume that Naruto was finished. After the first 3 months, Elfman realized that Naruto was never caught off guard in combat. Every time he had fought the blonde, the only times he landed an attack were when Naruto led him. It was still difficult for Elfman to watch as Naruto maintained his composure and always managed to block, stop, or counter every move he made. As expected, Naruto's right hand, the one not holding the book, grabbed the incoming limb with the swiftness of a cobra. Due to Elfman's newfound bulk, he was only able to lunge his left leg at Naruto, hoping to at least strike him. There's not that much luck. This time, Naruto's right leg lifted and blocked the larger feline leg. With his hand still tightened around Elfman's elbow, he attacked. Raiden no Yoroi, lightning release armor. A blue lightning bolt surged through his body, filling him with more strength and power than he usually possessed. The lightning shot from his fingertips through Elfman, hitting him with more than enough volts to send him twitching violently. The swift flick of his finger against Strauss's chest ended the young man's pain, though it sent him hurtling toward the opposite end of the training area. As Naruto turned the page in his book, he mentally reviewed Elfman's improvements. He's become at least twice as fast as before, which will greatly benefit his agility if he continues to practice. A roar reached his ears, and he continuously dodged to avoid the barrage of Elfman's punches. As expected, since he's focused more on the force of his blows, his raw strength has increased and is rapidly approaching superhuman levels. He ducked beneath a clawed hand and nonchalantly punched Elfman in the face. Pain tolerance is his most defining aspect. He can withstand damage at the level of a seasoned chunin, possibly even a jonin if he puts his mind to it. Overall, he presents himself very well as a close-quarters fighter. However, like a switch being flipped, Elfman transformed back into his base form in a shower of light, signifying the end of his spell. He collapsed to the ground, pulling on deep pants to ease his exhaustion. Haha, that was much better than the first few times, he grunted, getting to his feet. Naruto nodded and turned the pages again. Yes, your new spell has become much gentler than the first few times you tried it. Are you having any effect? Elfman shook his head. No, I feel fine. There's no pain like last time. Deep down, Elfman was ecstatic with the progress of his new spell. As its name suggested, it was a fusion of all the monsters he had used his magic on, a perfect combination of human intelligence, animal grace, and demonic strength. That's good to hear. Closing his book, Naruto crossed his arms and turned to look at his student with a frown. However, there are some weaknesses that need to be addressed. First, the duration you can maintain the spell is only 10 minutes, something we need to work on improving. As a spell that affects your body, the best thing to do would be to increase your stamina and understanding of the spell, to fight in longer battles, as well as reduce the amount of magic energy you use while in that form. Elfman pulled a notebook from somewhere in his clothing, which had remained remarkably undamaged throughout the test, and began jotting down the points Naruto had raised. Yes, please continue. Secondly, the beasts you selected for the spell contradict each other. For example, the beast is all about brute strength, while your Werediger is designed more for speed. Your form, while ideally feasible, is simply not applicable in battle against agile opponents. Fortunately for you, I have a solution which I will tell you tomorrow. The groan he heard made him chuckle softly. Oh, come on. The S-class tests start tomorrow. You'll be super busy once they begin. Real men take advantage of any opportunity that comes their way. Ara. Someone seems lively today. Next item of the day. A review of your dodging skills. He grinned. Bachan, I've never been so pleased to discover your inner sadist. Elfman and Lysana will surely benefit from this, though I'm sure they'll condemn me to hell for it. Oh well. That day, Elfman gained a healthy respect for all kinds of sports balls. The damage they could do in the hands of a skilled fighter was nothing to sniff out. Time skip. Uzumaki residence. Satsuna hummed a melodious tune to herself as she stirred the pot. Tonight, she was preparing dinner for the two of them, something she had reluctantly conceded to Naruto. Instead of handling all the household chores, as she had wanted ever since she became his servant, Naruto had devised a schedule that divided them both, with rotating shifts as well. They had discussed it for some time, with Naruto convincing her that just because she was his servant didn't mean he was going to leave all his responsibilities to her. Finally accepting the proposal, Satsuna had settled into her current routine quite well. Keeping the heat on a low flame, she perked up at the sound of the doors opening. Anticipation bubbled within her, a light blush settling across her face. Would he like her surprise? Kurum had insisted he would be all over her if she did, but she was so nervous. It was so out of character for her that she had briefly considered abandoning her plan, but her desire, for once, had rejected her. I'm home. She patted her cheeks, regaining some composure. Welcome home. Now was the moment of truth. Ka-san had taught her how to get his attention, and she was going to do it. In her seal, Kurum settled into one of the chairs in the room and grabbed some popcorn to prepare for the upcoming show. Lying beside her was a dildo, which she had crafted in the likeness of her future partner's member, just in case things got a little heated and she ended up getting turned on. You can do it, Satsuna-chan. Show those magicians you're an alpha female. Naruto entered the kitchen, about to ask what Satsuna was making for dinner, only to stop and stare at the Uchiha. Or rather, at his choice of clothing. A simple apron that did nothing to conceal his feminine figure. On the contrary, it seemed to enhance it. It didn't help that it was nighttime, when men are more sexually active than during the day. Asshole, what message are you trying to send? He asked, slowly approaching his friend. She nearly turned cherry red as Kurum began feeding her more lines. Naruto-sama, please grant this Uchiha's wish. Leaning against the table, she lifted her left leg and rested it on the surface, making it abundantly clear what she wanted him to do to her. She arched her back, accentuating her bust, which strained against the apron and looked as if it might burst. Please take my virginity once more, she finished with that damn seductive look she had mastered with her Bijuu, a look that very few people could completely resist. Naruto stopped right in front of her and wondered why she was being so bold today. She wasn't on her period, otherwise he would have caught the scent of blood, and she was immune to possession, one of the many advantages of having Kurum sealed inside her. Satsuna, he began tracing patterns on her thighs, stimulating her with his clawed fingers. Is something bothering you? You know you can always tell me what's bothering you. Her breath caught in her throat as he ran his fingers dangerously close to her inner thigh. She hesitated as he knelt and removed his mask. His tongue flicked out and made contact with her smooth skin, making her tremble in surprise. Oh, Kami-sama. She swallowed and shuddered again as his tongue traced a path over her lower body, his cold muscles sending shivers through her warm flesh. Lemon skipped. In the end, they didn't have dinner. Did they care? Not in the slightest. The next day, fairy tale. Murahin raised an eyebrow at her new rival. Satsuna seemed to glow in the room, exuding an air of self-satisfaction that intrigued her. After observing her for a few more minutes, she shook her head and turned back to the master, who stood on the second floor, looking down at the members. Alright, brats. Those chosen to participate in the S-class trials will now be announced. For those who didn't make it, I encourage you to use this as motivation to improve next year. Offering to get their attention, Makarov pulled a piece of parchment from his sleeve and unfolded it. The contestants are next. Hers is scarlet. The crowd erupted in cheers as the armored mage stepped forward, determination blazing in her eyes. She marched to the second floor, joining Makarov in his position. When she met Marahin's gaze, a smug expression spread across her face. Marahin Strauss. As quickly as it arrived, the smug look vanished and was replaced by an irritated one as Marahin simply headed for the second floor. When she reached the stairs, she turned to face Setsuna. "See you at the top, Setsuna." She smiled before walking towards her fellow contestant. "Laxus Dreher." Many people fell silent in shock. Was Laxus here? The crowd turned around, looking for the prodigal son when a disembodied voice was heard. "What's going on? You all seem to have been surprised that I'd get promoted." A bolt of lightning ripped through the guild, landing on the second floor with such speed that it caught Setsuna's attention. When the lightning dissipated, Laxus was revealed. He was a very tall, muscular teenager with blue-gray eyes. His hair was combed back, its numerous spiky strands pointing backward, though some of it fell over his forehead. He had a distinctive lightning-shaped scar over his right eye, and like his grandfather, he sported dark lines around his eyes, each with a single prominent eyelash sticking out. He wore an orange robe with leopard-like spots on the shoulders and sides, with dark-lined sleeves that extended below his elbows and fur trim along the bottom edges. He wore a bright red cape, tied in the front with a striking knot, which bore a large lighter fairy tale symbol on the back, and baggy, dark trousers tucked into light metal greaves. Around his waist was a simple belt to which he attached a device linked to his magical headphones. He also had a small chain attached around his right wrist. Naruto watched him wrap an arm around Marahin with a smug smile and narrowed his eyes. Marahin was annoyed, that much was clear, but Laxus wasn't paying any attention to it. Setsuna Uchiha. More cheers erupted as the Uchiha heiress ascended the stairs, her majestic air making her movement seem even more elegant than ever. Kana Alberona. Kana swallowed hard and stood up hesitantly from her seat. As she passed Naruto, he gave her a thumbs up, cheering her up a little. And the last candidate. Naruto Uzumaki. A second later, Naruto was on the second floor, appearing in a gust of wind between Laxus and Marahin. Pulling Marahin out of Laxus's embrace, Naruto narrowed his eyes at Makarov's grandson. From his previous display, it was safe to assume he was using lightning magic, though Naruto made a note to be on the lookout for any other magic Laxus he might have up his sleeve. "Hey Mira. Is he bothering you?" he asked, intentionally wrapping her in a protective hug with her back to him. He had seen the way Laxus looked at Marahin. He looked at her as if she were his, as if she were destined to be with him. For the moment, Naruto wanted to see what Laxus could do, and what better way to do that than to goad him into attacking. Marahin was a split second away from pushing Naruto away before an idea surfaced in her mind. She leaned back in his embrace and shot a smug look at Laxus, who stared back in surprise. "Yeah, but don't worry about it, Naruto-kun." The emphasis and the intimate way she pronounced his name put everyone who heard him on edge. Laxus was dangerously obsessed with Marahin, something most people couldn't understand. Was he a masochist or something? Laxus frowned at their interaction. Who did this rookie punk think he was? Who the hell are you, and what are you doing with my girl? Naruto bristled at that, something the girls quickly noticed. "If you didn't hear Master call my name, then I'd hate to see your pitiful backside when you're old and senile." And for the record, Kai began to emanate from the shorter blonde in the form of a dark aura, and he crashed into Laxus with the force of a raging bull. "Mira-chan isn't property. She doesn't belong to anyone." Lightning began to crackle around Laxus's right arm. "Why you, little," he growled. "That's enough, you two," Makarov admonished. "Save the antagonism for the first test. The battle skill test." Mira. The Magic Council was the governing body of the wizarding world. It possessed almost absolute control over the wizarding world, acting as a kind of leading government. The council ruled all the legal guilds scattered throughout the lands, overseeing and keeping them in check, and they were also responsible for events caused by wizards. They possessed the right to punish wizards who broke the law and to confiscate magical artifacts that could cause large-scale damage. The Magic Council is composed of 10 members at a time, or, to be more precise, 9 seats, numbered from 2 to 10. The first seat was occupied by the president, effectively the leader of the entire council, who made the final decisions on every matter. For the moment, all the members had gathered for one purpose. The evaluation of Fairy Tail's rising star, Uzumaki Naruto. The report they had received from Makarov had raised more than an eyebrow. A child, no older than 13, possessed magic capable of taming wild beasts into docile creatures. Even legendary dragons. There had been a furious debate about the boy. Should they take him out of the guild and recruit him into the royal army, or should they leave him in Makarov's hands? After 3 days of non-stop arguing, the president finally made his decision. They would wait until the child grew up within the fairy tale guild before taking any further action. If he was deemed mature enough, they would then take steps to bring him into their care. At this moment, the members of the council gathered around a large circular table, complete with chairs for them to sit on. A large video projector, levitating in the center of the table, provided all the members with a perfect view. With the projector's lacrima, as well as Makarov's permission, the council members could watch the first two trials from their headquarters. The first member, starting from the right clockwise, was a tall old man with a large grey beard and mustache. He had pointed ears and a habit of only opening them to reveal his eyes. He wore many layers of robes, like the other members of the Magic Council. Above his head, a small bat-like creature could be seen. This was Org, the sage of the Magic Council. So, the S-class trials are finally underway. Now we'll see this boy Makarov kept talking to, he said curtly. Indeed. It will be interesting to see how expert he is. The speaker, who was sitting next to Org, was a short old man with brown hair and a mustache. His tufts of hair resembled ears, and what appeared to be a pale yellow tail, gave him a cat-like appearance. Like everyone else, he wore many layers of robes. His name was Michello. Another member snorted. I doubt anything the teenager displays is of any consequence. For all we know, his magic might be the weakest of those fairies. His voice was noticeably younger than the others, like someone in the late stages of puberty. He was young, around 16, and his most striking features were his blue hair and the odd reddish mark tattoo below and above his right eye. He wore a smart but simple robe. It consisted of a long white tunic with black stripes along the edges and upper arms, an ornate collar, large straps connected to decorated buckles that fastened the vest in the front over a dark shirt, trousers, and matching shoes. He also sported a ring on his right hand, the middle finger, telling people to buck off in style, and the medallion attesting to his membership in the 10 holy mages around his neck, hidden by the collar of his jacket. His name was Seagrain. The woman laughed, a large crystal lacrima rolling between her hands. Ara. Seagrain-sama, it's not nice to underestimate someone, especially one praised by the guild master. She was even younger than Seagrain, probably around 14 years old. She had pale skin, dark purple hair, and brown eyes. Her attire was a simple yet revealing white dress with a stripped pattern. Her name was Altair Milkovich. The person sitting next to him was a tall elderly woman. She wore a cloak like her fellow council members and a purple turtleneck. Her most striking feature was her long nose, which gave her a more witch-like appearance. She had sandy blonde hair, tied back in a large ponytail. She was Belno. I agree with Seagrain. Aside from that lost magic of his, why should we expect anything extraordinary from the teenager? The next member of the council was a small elderly man with thick flesh-colored eyebrows and a tiny toothbrush mustache that reached halfway down his mouth. He wore a long-sleeved brown shirt with black vertical stripes and a black tricorn hat. Come now, Belno. Makarov may be old, but his standards are nothing to scoff at. The last of the assembled members was a tall, middle-aged man who wore small, round, dark-tinted glasses. He wore a white and blue Magic Council cloak, always with the hood up. He had large thin lips and tanned skin, with black hair and enormous sideburns that almost touched his lips. There were small hairs on his chin. He also had small downward pointing eyebrows, making him look angry and serious at all times. The first trial is about to begin, Yujima. It should be quite a spectacle. I heard Makarov's grandson will be on the exam. Altair let out an exaggerated sigh, her hand still toying with her lacrima. I wonder what he'll look like. Makarov-san didn't give us any description of Uzumaki-san. A mischievous smile flickered across her face. Perhaps he's a cute. Org raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't it be obvious? They're starting with the battle power test. Each pair of contestants will fight at a given time with their names called out. Unless he cracks under the pressure and drops out, I don't see how we're going to miss him. Fairy tale exam grounds. Alright everyone, Makarov shouted, drawing the attention of all the participating contestants. They were currently in a protected tent, away from the stands where the other fairy tale members were cheering and placing bets. We'll begin in the next 5 minutes. In this test, your goal is to defeat your opponent and demonstrate your combat prowess. His eyes shifted to Laxus as he spoke his next words. No serious mutilation is allowed. Life-threatening attacks are prohibited. Bones may be broken, but attacks that seriously affect the health and career of the contestants are strictly forbidden. Naruto frowned. There was his plan to end Laxus's career by breaking his spine. Gaara had to do it to those he disliked when he was a genin, so why couldn't he? The price to pay for joining a legitimate guild, I suppose. The cough from Makarov brought him back to attention. The first pair to face off will be Urza Scarlet and Satsuna Che. The two girls glanced at each other, the former with enthusiasm and competitive determination, while the latter simply analyzed her objective with a blank expression. When the bell rings, those expected should arrive on the stage. Good luck to everyone. With his announcement, Makarov left them in silence. Laxus grinned and crossed his arms. Heh, this will be easy. I'll destroy them all with my power, right Mira? He turned, expecting to see her drifting toward him, only to snarl when he saw that damned boy from before he spoke to her and that weak brunette. Hey, bastard. Stop being so nice to her. Murahin blinked in surprise when Naruto stopped talking and looked at Laxus. With his perpetual mask concealing his lower face, she couldn't see his full expression, but she could tell he was annoyed. Are you a jealous little girl or just plain slow? If Mira-chan wants to talk to me, who are you to tell me to stay away from her? Laxus blushed a furious red, his fist clenching in anger as Murahin looked at him in disappointment. What had happened while he'd been away training the Thunder God tribe? Sure, there had been a little friction between them after their last fight, but he thought things would have gone back to normal. Was it because of that new boy? Did he seduce Mira away from him, her boyfriend? The more she thought about it, the more likely her theory was to turn on her and shoot a hateful glare at Naruto. I swear I'll get rid of you someday, Uzumaki. Mira belongs to me. Not you. Me. Examine grounds. On the stage, which was a large expanse of land and served as a battlefield, Setsuna looked at her armored friend with a smile. Isn't this an unfortunate pairing for you, Urza-san? Urza said nothing, but her eyes trembled slightly. She had barely won any of her matches, and the times she had won were due to a combination of luck, surprise tactics, and Setsuna's lack of enthusiasm. Oh, she had improved well, but her growth wasn't dramatic enough to defeat her friend. Perhaps we should start the match and see how it goes. Yes, maybe we should. The match supervisor, who ironically was Strauss himself, decided not to waste any time. Battle between Setsuna Uchiha and Urza Scarlet begin. NA. Seems like a good place to stop. Sword fights have never been my thing, and starting Naruto's combat right away was unappealing to me. Unfortunately, my muse is being a bitch. I was doing really well writing the next chapter of Rebirth Prophecy when my rhythm just stopped. I don't know how that happened, but it made writing the rest a pain. As such, I turned to this to work on. Don't worry, I'll update my other stories before working on the next chapter of this fic. Just so you know, Gildertz appears in the next chapter, as well as the Thunder God tribe. You can also see Naruto's second secret student next time. I hope what I decided to give you makes sense and is engaging. I mean, I only had 6 months to work on them before the S-class business came up. Elfman's increasing strength doesn't mean he'll win more fights. It just means he has a greater physical chance of defeating his opponents. Mentally. He still needs more than a few lessons to reach that level of toughness I want him to have. Can anyone help me with swordplay scenes? Any ideas, tips or advice would be greatly appreciated. Chapter 12. Testing his worth. Chapter 12. The words had barely been spoken when both girls were running towards each other with a speed that surprised those unaware of their training. Being the faster of the two, Setsuna managed to draw her sword long before Urza and began the fight with a slight push. Urza was not fooled and chose to attack Setsuna with her magic sword, putting a lot of force into her swing. Metallic clash. Setsuna's cold eyes met Urza's fiery ones as her Kurohime clashed with Urza's sword, neither girl yielding an inch as they tried to gain the upper hand. In a shower of sparks, Setsuna swung her sword diagonally, knocking the heavier blade away from her. Unlike their fights, Urza didn't exert herself too much. She had learned that lesson from Naruto's beating. Releasing her sword just as Setsuna flung it aside, Urza swung her armored fist toward Setsuna. Setsuna's left hand swung to strike Urza's fist, though she had to reinforce it with a bit of chakra to avoid any bruising. Without pausing, Urza rolled her up. Gripping the ground, she spun a full 360 degrees, unleashing a barrage of double spinning kicks at Setsuna. Instead of making contact with flesh, Urza's feet met no resistance. Accustomed to crouching, her sharp battle instincts guiding her, she summoned a shield from her dimension to block Setsuna's aerial attack. Forcing a grimace, Urza leaped away from Setsuna, who landed easily despite Urza blocking her attack. Setsuna raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Urza's reaction. You almost never use shield, seems my lessons haven't been forgotten. Urza wordlessly summoned 2 more magic swords, wielding them in a reverse grip. How did you avoid my previous attack? She asked, pausing for a moment. The spell she was about to cast was new to her, as she hadn't practiced much with it and needed every advantage she could get. Setsuna cupped her cheeks with her free hand, somewhat amused. And here I was, starting to think you'd broken that habit. I think I'll have to re-educate you in combat etiquette. The tone of her voice, promising untold amounts of pain and suffering, along with the smile that emphasized her angelic features, made Urza pale and take a step back. That was a mistake that nearly cost her the match. As Urza stepped back, Setsuna was right in front of her with Kurohime already descending in a vertical slash. She barely managed to block the slash with her right sword, only to be pushed back by Setsuna. Caught off guard, Urza blocked Satsuna's upward kick with her second weapon. Looking into Satsuna's eyes, Urza immediately closed her left eye and focused her right eye on Satsuna's Sharingan. "That's better," she whispered. In a burst of movement, Satsuna broke free from Urza's grip, spun around, and delivered a blinding kick to Urza's chest plate, sending her skating. "Still not good enough," she yelled. Urza felt the wind rush from her lungs from the force of Satsuna's kicks and discarded her swords for a katana. Stabbing him in the ground, she unleashed her spell. Demon Blade Crimson Sakura. The blade began to glow with a malevolent red, its edge sharpening as she poured more of her magical energy into it. Hearing Kurohem's whistle once more, Urza circled around the barrage of slashes. Requip. Flight armor. Urza's attire vanished, revealing her armor change almost instantly. Naruto, who was watching the fight on the Lacrima video in the shop, raised an eyebrow in surprise. That time he'd fought her in Murahin, the speed of her requip ability had been impressive, but he'd had to stop moving before the spell took hold. Now she was able to do it against someone as fast as Satsuna. It was truly commendable to see the growth she'd achieved in just 6 months. Leaping backward, she charged towards Satsuna at ever-increasing speeds that left her nothing more than a blur in Laxus's eyes. With Satsuna suddenly on the defensive and attacking with everything he had, Urza rained blow after blow upon the black-haired mage. However, due to his Kekkei Genkai, Satsuna easily saw through her attacks and parried or blocked each of Urza's swings. Swinging her left leg back, Satsuna smiled as she cast her recent favorite jutsu. Chidori Koken, Sword of 1,000 Birds. As Urza swung again, a lightning bolt encased Kurohem's sword. By the time contact was made, Urza's katana had already been replaced by a long spear and a shower of sparks and metallic clangs. Glancing at Urza, Satsuna smiled as she took in Urza's impressive and swift requip. The armor was primarily gold and light blue. The breastplate was decorated with gold ornaments and had thin plates encircling Urza's neck. Her head was also adorned with a headband with 2 ribbons, and her hair was now styled in a long braid. As noted earlier, her weapon was a long spear with a very large blade and a decorated circle resembling a shield that attached it to the shaft. Waiting shop. In the shop, Laxus let out a snort. Is she really using the Lightning Empress armor against that weak lightning mage? What the hell is she thinking? Not that he's much of a threat. He crossed his arms as he watched the Lacrima video, never noticing Mira's frown as she glared at her rival. Naruto shook his head at Laxus's words. Satsuna is one of the best, if not the best, lightning mages in the guild right now. That wasn't exactly true. As far as he knew, he was the most knowledgeable in lightning manipulation in the guild. However, it was also true that he didn't use lightning jutsu often. Urza's choice was the necessary action to gain more points in this race to become S-class. She demonstrates that she is capable of making decisions that effectively address any problem she encounters. Furthermore, with her quick requip, she shows versatility in her fighting style. Something that most mages lack. Laxus growled angrily as Naruto appeared once more in front of Murahin. "Shut up, you damn know-it-all. S-class elites are selected according to their power, not the choices they make. In the end, those without power are destined to fade into the background, never to become S-class mages." Before Naruto could reply, Murahin made her opinion known. "Will you two stop fighting already? This fight is getting interesting, damn it," she scolded, smacking Laxus's arm and handcuffing Naruto. Pulling Naruto toward her, she marched further away from Laxus's position. "Since you two can't be civil around each other, I'll have to separate you two," she declared. Laxus frowned as he watched Murahin slide Naruto's arm close to her well-endowed chest. A pang of jealousy twisted his heart. There was the new guy who hadn't existed, who would have been enveloped in Murahin's embrace. It infuriated him to see his closest friend and object of desire being taken by the blonde-haired bastard. That bastard, when the time comes, I'll make sure he keeps his hands off my woman. Battlegrounds. Urza was having a hard time. It wasn't that her Lightning Empress armor wasn't working, because it wasn't. Having fought Satsuna countless times, Urza knew she could use lightning magic and had specifically saved up for the Lightning Empress armor. However, the way Satsuna used said lightning was what really made her fight. Unlike Laxus, who preferred to fire mid-range lightning bolts and incorporate lightning into his melee combat, Satsuna channeled a constant stream of highly concentrated lightning through her sword. This not only struck Urza every time they clashed, but with each blow, Urza could feel her Lightning Empress armor crack and shatter from the rising voltage. After all, while the Lightning Empress's armor had the offensive power of a lightning attack and granted Urza a limited ability to use lightning magic, Satsuna's extremely high affinity for lightning was more than a match for the armor. Enhanced by her monstrous chakra reserves, even at half strength, her lightning was superior to Urza's armor. Hearing Satsuna's footsteps approach, Urza whirled around and stopped her attack. A knee strike slammed into her chest plate once more, a distinct crack echoing as Urza gasped in pain. Dropping her requip, Urza stumbled, dazed. Setsuna saw Urza stagger, her arms clutching her chest, and decided to end their fight. Urza had shown enough for the master to consider. There was no need to continue this charade. She vanished from her position in a flock of crows and rematerialized before Urza, a discreet hand seal ready to cast a genjutsu. Only her deeply ingrained reflexes saved her from decapitation. Throwing her head back to dodge Urza's diagonal strike, Setsuna fell backward as she landed another upward kick. Urza blocked the attack with her gauntlets and immediately leaped forward. Settling into a crouching position, she weighed her options. She could continue fighting, surrender, or try to force Setsuna to surrender. She snorted at the first option. Setsuna was merely toying with her and knew most, if not all, of her tactics. Going against an opponent with so much information about her strengths and weaknesses would have been tantamount to suicide had these circumstances been real. The second option appealed to her more than she cared to admit. Half a year ago, she wouldn't have even considered it. She would have fought on until she collapsed. For one thing, giving up would leave a bad taste in her mouth and belittle her pride as a mage. For another, Makarov hadn't told them what the next task was. As far as she knew, it would require her to have some magic energy left to get through. Losing all her magic in this fight would show that she was incapable of planning for the possibility of future skirmishes, that is, it would portray her as someone focused on the here and now, rather than conserving energy for potential future battles. Besides, her pride wasn't everything to her. So what if she didn't achieve S-class on her first try? Everything happened for a reason. The third option was impossible. Getting Murahin to act like a refined lady would be infinitely easier than trying to deceive Setsuna. The last time she tried, she ended up buried in the dirt for most of the afternoon. Sighing, Urza raised her hand. I lose. This match will only end in my defeat if I continue, and I see no point in doing so. She found it slightly annoying that Elfman was looking at her with incredulous eyes, but she managed to keep her annoyance to a small mark. Once they were together again, Elfman proceeded to call. Lost winner, Setsuna-che. Waiting shop. Murahin blinked in admiration at the announcement. She lost. Did Red really lose her match? She was 2 seconds away from flipping her hick. Urza, the most stubborn person in the entire fairy tale guild besides herself, had swallowed her pride and acknowledged Setsuna as her superior. Naruto, who was standing next to her and Kana, shrugged. That was all she could do. Setsuna knows how she fights, she's physically superior to her, and she can't be outmatched by just anyone. The match ended the moment it began. Urza gave it her all, but sometimes luck isn't always on your side, something Urza just experienced. Kana frowned, her eyes shifting from the Lacrima video to Naruto. But why give up? How does that show someone is capable of being an S-class? She could risk guessing, but at that moment she needed to stay out of the spotlight. Currently, Naruto was the center of attention. He had proven himself an expert in combat and was strong enough to defeat Setsuna, according to his sushi-obsessed friend. Laxus had expressed a desire to fight him, Murahin was interested in the possibility of fighting him again, and even she wanted to see how he measured up against her. This served her well. With no one else around, except for Naruto, who was the type to never underestimate anyone, expecting her to be a challenge, she had the element of surprise on her side. Well, unless she was matched up against Naruto. Naruto pulled a book from somewhere on his person and lazily began flipping through the pages. I can't find any fault with Urza when it comes to facing Setsuna with courage. However, very few people have the courage to sheathe their sword once it's drawn. He stopped at a marked page and began to read. Fear isn't a bad thing. It tells you what your weakness is. And once you know your weakness, you can become stronger and more adaptable to the challenges you face. It's necessary to become an S-class mage. Learn this lesson well, and you'll definitely go far in life. The sound of the tent flap opening caused each of the remaining candidates to shift their attention to Makarov and another individual entering. Naruto squinted as he assessed the stranger. He was a tall, muscular man with shoulder-length reddish-orange hair combed back and some stubble around his mouth and chin. His attire was simple. A dark tattered cloak over his bare chest, with a high collar and armored plates on the shoulders, held closed by a belt and covering his entire figure, and loose-fitting dark trousers, complete with an armored waist guard with plates similar to those on his shoulders, tucked into simple boots. The man's magical abilities were something that intrigued Naruto. Even though Naruto felt they had been suppressed to a minimum, he could tell they completely surpassed anything the S-class aspirants could achieve. If he had to compare his former self to the strange, at best, man, it would be very close, but Naruto was confident he would have found a way to defeat him, though he doubted it would be anything other than the usual approach. Overwhelming his enemies with his shadow clone jutsu, activating Nine Tails chakra mode, and finishing with a new version of the Rasengan. He broke out in a sweat. Damn, I'd really have Lady Luck's favor if I managed to survive doing that. His sensitive ears caught Kana's startled gasp as she stared at the man. Pretending to read his book, his eyes watched the emotions play across her face. Surprise, joy, sadness, embarrassment, and the tiniest seeds of hatred. A rather interesting mix of contrasting emotions, especially the last. He was curious about the possible relationship between the man and Kana, but he shrugged and returned to his book. If she was ready to tell him, he would say that there was no point in asking for details. Alright everyone, gather around. It's time to choose the next pair of contestants, Makarov said as he stood in front of the video lacrima. Let me remind you that losing your match doesn't mean you're out of the S-class category. If you fall to your opponent, use it as experience and improve yourself. Glancing at his partner, Makarov coughed lightly. The next match, which was chosen completely at random, is Kana Alberona vs Marahin Strauss. The apologetic look he gave her annoyed the brunette card mage. Marahin looked at Kana with an appreciative expression. Are you ready to do this, sister? Laxus interrupted before Kana could say a word. What are you saying? That magic card of hers against your takeover? What other outcome do you expect besides cleaning the floor with it? Anna gritted her teeth in anger and disappointment as she listened to Laxus, one of her strongest mages, speak to her in front of Gilderts. She was furious that he had insulted and degraded her magic to something not even worth learning. She had spent years practicing her card magic, dedicating so much time, sweat, and energy to mastering it. To have it belittled, especially by the master, enraged her like nothing she had ever seen before. Before she could open her mouth and she would most likely respond and end up saying something she hadn't meant to. Naruto spoke. Be your best, Kana. I'm pretty sure you have a few surprises in store for us. He gave her a discreet wink as she turned and looked him in the eye. She felt her heart clench uncomfortably. Was it him? Pushing her thoughts aside, she nodded resolutely and headed for the stands, her mind a whirlwind of plans and counter-plans. On her right arm, a seal became visible for the briefest of seconds before vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Examine grounds. Elfman swallowed audibly as he watched his sister and Kana leave the tent. The two were obviously the next pair to fight. Ni-chan, you'd better not underestimate Kana, you have no idea how much she's changed. He closed his eyes and sighed deeply. This next battle might get a little ugly. His sister was never really one of the surprises. Are both fighters ready? Kana nodded resolutely as Marahin smiled. Let's begin. Kana immediately began hurling rows of magic cards at Marahin, her movement swift and precise. Marahin moved easily through the barrage, though she took note of how to avoid them after hearing the cards hit the ground with enough force to shatter it. Kana kept her face blank as she continued to send more cards en masse toward her opponent. Marahin let out a laugh as she proceeded to dodge, somersault, and avoid all of Kana's cards. Hey Kana. Seriously, this little act of yours is boring. Leaping away from another barrage of cards, Marahin decided to go on the offensive. Extending her hand toward Kana, her magic flowed beneath the brunette as she shouted her spell. Darkness Stream. A multitude of large tendrils exploded from the ground and shot toward Kana. Throwing herself out of the tendrils' reach, Kana cursed as another swarm of tendrils emerged from the ground and tried to engulf her. Wind Edge. She drew two cards. Sky and an unnamed one, with a green, wind-like drawing, and combined them in one hand. With the other, she waved it in the direction of the spell, activating it. The gust of updraft generated from the ground several meters away, forcing Marahin to leap into the sky to avoid it. When Kana saw this, she let a smile spread across her face. I've got you. Channeling magical energy into his left hand, he swiftly struck his right bicep while simultaneously releasing the gathered energy. In a puff of smoke, two black gloves appeared on his hand. Managing to grab one while Marahin was still airborne, he leaped toward her and raised the right gloved fist. Marahin saw the incoming fist and grimaced as she prepared to block it. Shit. What happened next was the real showstopper. When the blast hit, Marahin was flung way beyond the distance she should have landed. Instead of being knocked down with just a slight increase in speed, she was propelled from her original position with a velocity comparable to jets. The crowd remained silent for a few moments, no doubt trying to figure out what had happened, before cheering like crazy for the show. Landing gracefully, Kana put on her other glove and looked at the clouds of dust that had risen when Marahin crashed to earth. She could barely make out a shape. Squinting, she saw something that looked remarkably like a bat's wing. Demon Blast. A large ball of dark energy blew through the dust cloud to reveal Marahin in her partial takeover form. She aimed the ball at Kana and fired, a large violet beam streaking toward her. Thinking quickly, Kana slammed her fists into the ground. The force of her blow kicked up a layer of earth, which she swiftly built into a makeshift barrier, shielding it with her magic energy. When Mira's attack struck, a massive cloud of dust erupted, thick and heavy, providing Kana with a good smokescreen. Standing away from the cloud of dust, Marahin's form was fully revealed to the crowd. Unlike her Satan soul, she didn't age when she used this spell. One could say she closely resembled a miniature version of her Satan soul. Her hair was still styled in the same wild fashion as usual in her Satan soul form. Her attire was the same. The same gothic clothing she always wore. Her arms were covered in scales, though they lacked the fin-like protrusions on the outer edges, as well as the gauntlets. Large wings completed the form. These wings resembled those of a bat and had small, spike-like protrusions along their upper edges. The fountain of prayer. A fountain of water shot out from within the cloud of dust, hurtling toward Marahan with unremitting speed. A jolt of fate. A bolt of lightning followed the water, its static form flickering in and out of existence as it moved forward. Taking another breath, Marahan smiled as Kana emerged from her hiding place and prepared another attack. Looking ahead with her wings, Mira spun around with a spinning kick that collided with Kana's right hook. Using her momentum to enhance her strike, Marahan blasted Kana across the arena with her right fist and finished with another demon blast. Striking Kana, the lightning bolt slammed her hard into the unforgiving earth with enough force to create a miniature crater. When the dust settled, Kana's battered and bruised form could be seen twitching on the ground. The crowd made several sympathetic noises as Marahan landed in front of the fallen girl, a somewhat sad expression etched on her face. Kana was her friend, one of the few true friends she had in the guild. She wasn't a great fighter, and her magic was more support magic than combat-oriented, while Marahan was seemingly built for combat. The moment the master called their names, they both knew how it was going to end. The fact that Kana gave it her all and kept getting up only made him sadder. Marahan ducked, preparing to knock Kana out and claim victory, when she felt it. A pulse of magical energy directly beneath her. Eyes wide, she leaped forward, summoning a magic circle. Summon lightning. Kana's scream sent her looping. It wasn't coming from the Kana she'd almost knocked out, it was coming from behind her. The cage of green lightning rapidly expanded from the seal and engulfed Marahan completely, electrifying her with massive bursts of energy. Marahan's cries of pain tugged at Elfman's heartstrings, but he forced himself not to succumb to his desire to end the fight just yet. There was still a chance Marahan could turn things around. The battered Kana erupted in smoke just as the lightning cage was shattered by a powerful blast of darkness magic. Landing shakily, Marahan began searching for her opponent in the disoriented haze. That last attack of his really took my breath away, I need to finish this quickly. Looking down at her knees for balance, Mira noticed a shadow growing ever larger. Heavenly pain kick. Due to her disoriented state, Mira made the rookie mistake of looking in the direction of the shout. A sandaled foot slammed into her face, pushing her deep into the ground in a mini crater and raising another cloud of dust in the arena. Unlike last time, Kana hadn't used her magic-induced strength to carry out the attack. She still struggled to control the flow of energy the way Naruto and Lisana could, and trying to do so in the middle of a battle would only backfire. There was silence in the arena as Kana gasped from the grueling fight. Proudly, though exhausted, she raised her fist in victory. Winner by knockout, Kana Alberona. Urza. But the Magic Council, every single member had been watching the fights with interest to assess the strength of Fairy Tail's latest generation. While some members, namely Seagrain and Belno, were annoyed by the constant delay of Naruto's debut, others were impressed by the fights they had seen so far. While the battles didn't quite match those of S-class mages, it was remarkable that mages as young as these could fight, as well as the latest batch from Fairy Tail. Ord continued to twitch his beard as he watched the ongoing fights. Such an impressive and efficient requip skill, this Urza Scarlet seems to have pushed requip magic to its limits. When word gets out about her ability, she might even become a role model for future requip mages. Bacella nodded, her eyes narrowed in thought. Her swordsmanship skills are intriguingly high for a teenager. If I had to make an honest assessment of her swordsmanship, I'd say she's roughly on par with our captains. She opened her eyes and frowned as she watched Urza and Setsuna clash. The other girl, Setsuna Uchiha, is also very promising. Not only is she highly skilled with a sword, but she can also use it in conjunction with lightning magic to inflict significant damage on her opponents. Seagrain chuckled, her eyes fixed on the form of her old childhood friend. Indeed, she has talent. Being able to defeat the Lightning Empress armor is something only a few individuals can do, and even then they use other forms of magic to do it. For her to be able to accomplish such a feat, she must have an exceptional ability, a strong affinity with lightning. Ijima nodded in agreement. Yes. I've never seen anyone think of executing lightning magic through a sword. Most of the time, the weapon used is a spear to avoid accidentally striking the wielder due to its length. However, I can see why a blade could also be used. Not only will the lightning push the blade's sharpness to its absolute maximum, but if an opponent is stabbed, their body will go numb. An unorthodox but very effective solution. Belno snorted. That may be so, but I think the match between Kana Alberona and Marahan Strauss was disappointing. Strauss was barely paying attention to her surroundings, focusing solely on defeating her opponent and showing little to no strategy to prove she's S-class material. Altair covered her lips as she laughed. Well, what did you expect from fairy tale wizards? They rarely think and are prone to fits of emotion-induced madness. If anything, we should be impressed with Miss Alberona's performance. It's very rare that we fight fairy tale wizards with strategy. Ijima jumped when the next announcement was made. Final match of the first trial. Naruto Uzumaki vs Laxus Dreyer. It's starting. When the council members shifted their attention to the Lacrima video, Seagrain smiled as she leaned back. Urza's performance was good, but it required a great sacrifice to bring back the Black Mage Zeref. Even if she continued to grow at this rate, she wouldn't make it. Still, something good has come out of this. Setsuna Uchiha Naruto Uzumaki, I wonder if any of you will be the one to release Master Zeref from his slumber. Fairy Tale Exam Grounds. In the center of the grounds, the two male S-class potentials stood facing each other. In the southern hemisphere of the center, Laxus grinned as he removed his cloak and his magic earphones. Tossing them aside as he glared at his opponent, Laxus began to stretch and warm up. To the onlookers, he seemed unconcerned about the upcoming fight. So, are you ready to eat, you dirty boy? Naruto, standing before Laxus, ignored the taunt and began removing his ankle-length black coat. When he tugged on one side, the three X-shaped marks holding it together separated easily and quickly. As the coat fell away, the crimson vest beneath was revealed. Furthermore, the tattoo-like bands crisscrossing his chest and wrists, along with the black lines on his forearms, were now more visible. The coat vanished in a burst of light, and Naruto glared at Laxus with bored, narrowed eyes. The question you should be asking me is how far I'm going to push you to the ground. If I were you, I'd start giving up hope right now. Laxus frowned and settled into his ready stance. I'm going to make you eat those words. He growled. Naruto shrugged and reached into his pocket for a book, which caused Laxus to give him a strange look and Elfman to stare with his palm. I'm ready when you are. Deciding to get things started, Elfman lowered his hands. Naruto Uzumaki vs Laxus Dreyer, let's begin. Turning the page, Naruto decided to start the fight slowly to get a feel for Laxus. He had a general idea of what Laxus was capable of. Now, he needed to get the specifics and limits of Makarov's grandson. Shouldn't you be attacking now, honorable grandson? Laxus stiffened at the name and unleashed a massive burst of magical energy from his body in the form of lightning. A flash of light erupted around him like a pseudo-armor, bathing him in a brilliant yellow light. If Naruto didn't know better, he would have thought Laxus was trying to resemble an angel or some celestial being. Never call me that, he commanded, his voice thick with negative emotion. Naruto paid him no attention, simply turning the pages once more. Ara. Do you think you're in any position to ask me anything about Grandpa? He grinned, making Laxus turn red with anger. Bucket. Manipulating the lightning energy within his body, Laxus vanished into pure elemental lightning that crackled with furious vigor. The bolts hurtled toward Naruto at the speed of sound, easily reappearing behind the blonde boy and coalescing into Laxus, whose lightning-coated fist descended toward Naruto's back. The lazy backhand sent him flying away from Naruto in an undignified pile-up toward the ground. Managing to recover just in time and land safely, Laxus winced as the left half of his face throbbed. Rubbing it, his unobstructed eye narrowed toward Naruto. How did his eyes manage to keep up with my speed? I should have been able to hit him without him noticing. Deciding to try again, Laxus used his lightning body spell to back away and attempt to strike Naruto from the right side. With his right hand occupied, it would be easier to attack from that side. Unfortunately for Laxus, Naruto had been dealing with shinobi who moved as fast as Laxus for far longer than he bothered to count. By the time Laxus had covered half the distance to him, Naruto was already on the move. A raised right leg blocked the lightning user's knee strike, his left hand parried the blow aimed at his gut. Laxus immediately retreated and tried again from another direction, growing increasingly frustrated as Naruto blocked, dodged, and countered every single blow. What truly infuriated Laxus was that not only did Naruto manage to keep up with Laxus's lightning rush, but he still managed to take a single bloody step the entire time. It was almost as if Naruto could predict his every move. An elbow collided with Laxus's face with intense force, the power behind the blow actually managing to momentarily deactivate Laxus's lightning body spell. Regaining his composure, Laxus once again attempted to catch Naruto with his speed. Appearing directly above the blonde reader, he unleashed a downward diagonal kick aimed at Naruto's head. That's when Naruto moved. Like nothing Laxus had ever seen before, the blonde vanished from sight at speeds his eyes couldn't perceive. His attack completely disappeared. Laxus didn't even have time to regain his balance before Naruto reappeared and struck his elbow in the exact same spot as his previous attack. Sent to the ground once more, Laxus growled heatedly as Naruto continued reading his book. This can't be happening. I can't be played by that rookie. It's all a dream, that's what it is. I'm going to wake up and I'll be victorious. Then Laxus noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. Where Naruto was standing was the exact position he'd been in before he vanished and dodged Laxus's kick. There were no footprints, nothing to indicate he'd moved. Laxus wouldn't know it, but that was the moment he began to see Naruto as someone to measure himself against. His speed, even among lightning mages, was inhuman. He was praised as one of the fastest, if not the fastest, in Fiori. Naruto's speed wasn't inhuman. That would be insulting to compare someone like him to a human. It wasn't even godlike, because that would imply that, however impressive it was, it didn't reach a level beyond mortal comprehension. That assumption would also be wrong. Naruto's speed was that of the gods themselves. Speed at a level that transcended the limits of semi-evolved beings. Calming his trembling, Laxus decided to try something new. Positioning his right arm a few inches from his left, both palms open and extended, Laxus created a sphere of lightning around his outstretched forearm. Thunder bullets. A barrage of small but destructive spheres of lightning shot toward Naruto at great speed. Seeing the beams hurtling toward him, Naruto decided his book had to vanish to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Stuffing it into his pocket, where it was sealed, Naruto charged toward Laxus, dodging the barrage of orbs like a snake slithering across a river as if in slow motion. Appearing silently before Laxus, Naruto launched him upward with a powerful kick reminiscent of Might Guy's Taijutsu technique, Eisakujaku, Morning Peacock. Without pausing, he used a Cage Bio, Shadow Dancer technique to appear behind Laxus, mirroring his body's movement. Using the creation of all things jutsu to create black wrappings, Naruto skillfully restrained Laxus in a manner similar to how Lee used his bandages to perform the Amit Renge, front lotus. With Laxus restrained, Naruto struck a gravity seal and pulled Laxus to the ground. Still hanging in midair, Naruto took a deep breath as he manipulated his powerful chakra to flow like Natsu's and attacked. "Fire Dragon," he said, hearing the crowd fall silent at his words. Naruto smiled at the confusion they must be feeling. Roar. A huge pillar of flames descended upon Laxus, resulting in a tremendous explosion that wrecked a good portion of the grounds and forced Elfman to jump into the stands. Landing mid-crouch, Naruto peered through the smoke to see Laxus struggling to his feet, several burns visible across his body. Revenge is a bitch, isn't it? Still, we'd better finish things quickly. Blurring his gaze toward the astonishing Laxus, Naruto focused the chakra in his hands and struck. Several times. In rapid succession. Point blank. Eisakujaku, Morning Peacock. Face. Arms. Legs. Chest. Guts. Back to the face. Switches to the chest. Naruto left no spot unmarked in his furious assault, striking as hard as he was fast. All the crowd could see were countless flames unfurling in the shape and appearance of a peacock's feathers as Naruto continued groaning over Laxus, not letting up until he felt Laxus was unconscious. Throwing Laxus to the ground, Naruto waited half a minute, calmly reading his book once more, before the crowd and Elfman gasped. Winner by knockout. Naruto Uzumaki. Chapter 13. It's finally here. Demon King vs Guild Ace. Chapter 13. The outcome of the announcement was as predictable as rain on a cloudy day. The crowd of mages roared with joy and approval, shouting and waving their hands with fervent excitement at the recent battle they had witnessed. Bottles of beer were opened and consumed with a zeal that would have seemed extravagant to those outside the guild, and boisterous applause echoed in the stands as proud friends of the combatants exchanged words of praise and pride. In a section of the stands where the younger generations were seated, Natsu let out a boisterous round of applause at Naruto's victory, even standing up in his seat and shouting his excitement. Woohoo. Yes. That fight was incredible. Naruto beat Laxus like he was a sack of potatoes. Yes. Happy agreed, his little cat body being pampered by Lisanna. Bray, who was sitting 2 seats away from Natsu and right next to Lisanna, had a wide grin on his face and nodded. Yeah, he owned Laxus so much that even the old man must have felt sorry for him. Placing his hands behind his head, Gray leaned back to examine Laxus's fallen form with a satisfied look. I can't say I'm not enjoying this. I think that bully got what he deserved. Someone finally knocking him off that pedestal he likes to promote himself on. Lisanna frowned uncertainly at Gray's words, involuntarily fiddling with Happy's wings. Even so, I think Naruto was a little too harsh on him. That last attack really seemed impressive, isn't it? I bet he could teach me some of his moves, then I'll be an even bigger kicker than I am now. Natsu sang, throwing a smug look at Gray, which made the ice mage frown. Sitting back from his previous position, ignoring Wakaba's unintentional slap, Gray shot his rival a dirty look. As if Naruto would waste his time teaching you any of his moves. You just burn the guild hall down again, like when he tried to teach you the fire release. Water release technique. Immediately in Gray's face, pushing his way through Lisanna with surprising strength, Natsu growled at his rival and breathed flames. At least he knew it was better to try and teach me his attacks than waste his time on a snow stripper like you. Ray nodded in agreement with Natsu's words and began pushing his head against Natsu's. Show me what you know. He already showed me a bunch of things he said were above your level. Want to see? Come on, snowflake. I'll burn you until you're crispy. In your dreams. Lysandra sighed in exasperation as the two began another mock fight beside her, a giant cloud of dust obscuring their shapes and only the sounds of their fight could be heard. Honestly, kids were so stupid sometimes. Waiting shop. Inside the shop, Makarov and Gilderts watched the Lacrima projection as it displayed the final moments of Naruto's fight, specifically, the last attack he had used against Laxus. Having fought against several high-level melee combatants in their lives, they could recognize the amount of skill required to execute the devastating technique they had witnessed. Gilderts frowned as the scene repeated itself once more. I'm not sure what to make of this, Master. No matter how much of a genius the child must be, he simply shouldn't be capable of such a powerful attack at his age. His body should be in the middle of puberty, meaning it should be changing to accommodate its future design and granting him more strength to use. For him to possess such strength at this young age, he shrugged hopelessly. I simply can't flip a coin. Makarov said nothing, simply crossing his arms as he watched the projection play out Naruto's furious onslaught of blows, which were so rapid that some of them looked like little more than twitches on the screen. Another thing that bothers me, Gilderts continued, is the nature of that attack. If you look at it carefully, the first strike seems to cause the most damage and leaves the victim paralyzed due to the excruciating pain therein. The subsequent strikes are only slightly less powerful than the first, implying that the attack as a whole was designed to be a one-hit technique and end the life of its target at the end of the barrage. Although Laxus is clearly not dead, I don't think Naruto should be considered an S-class mage for some time, now no member of Fairy Tail. Makarov sighed deeply. I can understand where you're coming from, Gilderts, believe me, a part of me wants to do what you say and remind Naruto that Fairy Tail is his family. Family always sticks together, no matter what, and what he did certainly crossed the line. Taking another deep breath, Makarov continued, however, as guildmaster and as a person, I can't prevent Naruto from reaching S-class status. No matter how much I try to convince myself otherwise, Laxus's words ring true. Without you and me, Fairy Tail is truly nothing to boast about. Before Naruto and Setsuna came along, Laxus would have been considered the strongest after you, and we both know just how vast the power gap is between you two. Turning to face Gildert's surprised expression, Makarov spoke once more. Despite our best efforts to deny it, Fairy Tail needs stronger mages to flourish. Without stronger mages, there would be fewer applications. With fewer applications, there would be less to offer those interested in joining the guild. If this continues, the guild's future would be bleak. Jumping in surprise, Gilderts growled at Makarov. Are you going to let a future flight hazard become an S-class mage over something that can't even be achieved? Come on, man, you have to see that going down this path could backfire and tarnish Fairy Tail's name even more than you think. Unfortunately, Gilderts, that is my decision. I will instill in Naruto the importance of loyalty and family, and I will stand by my words, but I will not deny him the opportunity to achieve more in life. This discussion is over. With that, the diminutive old man turned to face the candidates, leaving Gilderts lost in thought. Second tent. Inside the second tent that had been erected during the previous fights, rested the S-class candidates, all of whom wore looks of anticipation, ill humor, and, in Laxus's case, hatred as they waited for Master Makarov to arrive and inform them about the upcoming trial. Urza and Murahin were huddled together in a corner, the former speaking in a low but heated tone, while the latter argued just as fiercely, her arms crossed in defiance. To everyone in the tent, it was obvious that Urza was interrogating her lifelong rival friend about her rather disappointing match against Kana. It was easy for Naruto to realize that Urza was trying to come to terms with the fact that Murahin, the person she couldn't easily beat and with whom she often bonded, had been outmatched by Kana, quite useful in that regard. Somewhere in the deepest recesses of his mind, despite knowing that she had grown immensely under Setsuna's tutelage, he now had some doubts about her abilities. Naruto sighed. The young teenagers were an enigma to solve, with the constant contradictory messages they sent. Crossing his arms, Naruto felt his arm brush against the pocket of his coat, where a scroll lay hidden. Letting his eyes casually scan his surroundings once more, he silently cautioned himself against being so eager to read what Jiraiya had sent him. The S-class exam is neither the time nor the place for me to read what Iro-sensei has discovered. The Magic Council will be watching, and this exam will be my only chance to make a good impression on them. Beside her, as always, Setsuna shifted from one foot to the other, studying Laxus Dreyer with mild interest and thinly veiled disdain. She had overheard what he had said about his apprentice and was quite displeased with the way he spoke about hers as battle tactics. The arrogance he displayed reminded her of the unpleasant antics of Senju Nawaki, her former Chunin squad commander, as well as the Senju clan as a whole. But the Genjutsu in his eyes, no one but Naruto noticed that he was activating his clan's famous Kekkei Genkai and maintaining eye contact with him. Inside the seal, Kurum laughed at her kit's actions. That fool won't know what hit him. Good one, Setsuna. It's almost as if they never thought to tip the scales in their favor. Setsuna nodded mentally. Yes, although Naruto-sama still has the biggest advantage over all of us, though I wonder if he managed to tag Drayer-san with his Flying Thunder God seal. Either way, it still puts Naruto-sama at the top of the order. And you're in second place, right? She shrugged. Who else would be a challenge for Naruto-sama? The tent flaps flew open and Makarov entered with a serious expression. Alright, kids, the next test will begin shortly, so everyone should get ready. I see the injured have been restored to their previous state thanks to Puryusika's help. I bet you're all wondering why that was done. He said, gesturing to the healthy Murahin, Urza and Laxus. Seeing their nods of agreement, Makarov continued. The fact is that these tests will only increase in difficulty as we progress toward the end of the examinations. As such, all participants are given medical treatment after each test to prevent any decrease in performance due to injuries sustained in previous tests, as well as to check for and disqualify those participants who use certain stimulants to enhance their progress. Has there ever been a case where doping was a problem? Urza asked, frowning at the thought of someone cheating on the exam. Makarov nodded earnestly. Yes, there have been some cases where certain mages, overwhelmed by the desire to achieve S-class status, subjected themselves to all sorts of rituals, drank all kinds of potions, and did everything they could to pass the exam. Laxa snorted at that. What losers if they weren't so weak-kneed, they wouldn't have had to resort to such cowardly measures. For my part, I'm deeply insulted that you think we'd do something like that, old man. He shot an angry look at his grandfather. Naruto and Setsuna rolled their eyes. Why did the people here see the traps as suspicious? When facing opposition from multiple people, it was always better to gain an advantage to compensate for being outnumbered. Makarov frowned. Insulted or not, you'd better take that warning seriously in this exam. Now prepare for the next test. The knowledge test. It was. Back with the Magic Council, many of the council members were talking aloud among themselves about the young mage the Fairy Tail Guild Master, Makarov, had so brazenly boasted about. The young mage, Naruto Uzumaki. Having seen the match between him and Laxus Drayer, a powerful lightning mage in his own right, many of them were ecstatic and impressed with the results of the match. Ijima let out a boisterous laugh when the fight was over. Ha! Take that. Here they all were, taking down the young lad as if they were all-knowing or something, and they were right. Maki may be old, but he's not senile yet. Borg grimaced at Ijima's words. To be fair, most of the recommendations and reports we receive about people tend to be at least a little exaggerated. Makarov's claim that the kid could create an entirely new class just seemed like the usual arrogant boasting that most guild masters make about their most prized members. Coughing lightly to clear his throat, Org surveyed his colleagues with an interested eye. So? What did everyone think of him? Belno was the first to respond. I think he's as powerful as Makarov said he was. Not only did he display incredible strength, good combat skills, and particularly devastating fire magic, but he also showed speed that's perhaps on a level never before achieved. If you look at the fight more closely, he gestured toward the screen as he went through the recorded fight. You'll notice that Uzumaki was able to completely evade Drayer's charge, return to his previous position, and strike him in the face with his elbow all in tenths of a second. Altair leaned back in her seat, her eyes glued to the screen as she replayed the fight with unusual intensity. That would imply his leg muscles strengthened to an abnormal degree to allow him to reach and maintain such speeds. His clothing reveals that his body isn't particularly muscular. If anything, his build resembles that of a sprinter or swimmer. It shows how many appearances can be deceiving. Gently grasping a lock of her hair and twirling it absent-mindedly on her finger, Altair's intense expression softened and turned mischievous. Being kicked by those machine legs must hurt like hell. Altair-san, that's not how you should talk about someone as young as you, Belno warned, frowning. Altair simply nodded with a cheeky grin that showed how much she thought about that statement. Beside her, Seagrain rubbed his head in embarrassment and laughed nervously. I guess I jumped the gun this time, Ujima-san. This Uzumaki guy seems to be a truly talented individual. Settling into a more comfortable seat, Seagrain continued to give his impression of Naruto. He seems very resourceful and turned his opponent's anger against them, which I know from experience is very effective. The only other magic he used in the fight was fire magic, but what I just witnessed is far more impressive than anything I've seen from our top fire mages. Resting his chin on his open palm, Seagrain smiled at Org. If anything, it resembles the kind of control that Fairy Tail's Dragon Slayer has over his element. Coincidence, perhaps. The cheerful atmosphere in the room slowly turned serious as everyone watched the final blow once more, comparing and contrasting its performance to that of Natsu Dragneel, the youngest member of Fairy Tail, who had caused the most damage in over a decade. As the council members grew increasingly alarmed by how disturbingly similar the two attacks were, none of them, except for Altair, saw the maniacal grin that spread across Seagrain's face. After all, if he could appear as someone the boy could trust and rely on, why should he use force when slippery words would be more effective in helping him resurrect Zareth? Fairy Tail Stadium. Once back in the stadium, the S-class candidates presented themselves before Makarov as he explained the second trial. The test of knowledge will test your ability to discern an opponent's magical alignment, as well as your skill in dealing with unknown magic. To increase the difficulty of this test, you will be given a 2-minute time limit to name at least 2 different types of magic that your opponents will use against you. Urza took another step forward, a question burning on her lips. Who will we face? The old man chuckled and withdrew his hand from behind, revealing a small, slightly crumpled paper bag. I'm afraid you'll have to figure it out yourselves. Well, I know the names of everyone you'll be facing, even I can't say which one you'll ultimately choose. Holding the bag, Makarov shook it with a smile. Go on, pick your target and pray you get a good one. Taking a step forward with a hint of displeasure, Laxus nevertheless gave the others a confident smile as he reached into the bag and began fiddling with it. After a few moments of considering his choice, he pulled back his arm to reveal a small strip of paper that had been carefully folded in two. Unfolding the strip, his eyes narrowed in confusion. Am I going to be tested by a guy named Jiraiya? Nodding casually, Makarov extended the bag toward Kana, who was standing closer to Laxus. Those you will face are individuals I have selectively chosen to test your mettle. As master, I have the right to know what magic they use to gauge the difficulty you will face in this challenge. Walking toward Makarov, Kana slipped her hand into her bag and pulled out a random piece of paper. Unrolling it, she raised an eyebrow at the name written on it. My opponent is Anko Mitarashi. What kind of name is that? Urza was next. Tenzo, she said, her eyes narrowed in thought. Warahin clicked her knuckles and reached into the bag, a look of concentration on her face. Removing her hand, she read the name with a touch of excitement. Jugo. Tsutsuna was next, her eyes calm and zen-like as she chose her opponent. Chijuro sounds interesting. Naruto watched Kana, Murahin, Urza and Tsutsuna retrieve a name from the bag and announce their opponents, suppressing the smile he longed to display, despite his lower half always being hidden by his late mentor's mask. It had been a great test of patience to ensure their pseudopaths had caught Makarov's attention and secured their selection during this trial. Seeing that it was finally his turn, he placed his hand inside the bag with some interest. With his hand hidden from view, a chakra cord grew from his finger and connected to a piece of paper that had residual chakra. Moving his index finger back, the slip of paper slid into his palm and he withdrew his hand. As he unfolded the slip, a look of satisfaction appeared in his eyes. Menma Kazama. Fairy Tail Exam Grounds. Very well. The test of knowledge is about to begin. Elfman roared, having had to resort to shouting to make his voice heard above the noise of the crowd. The first candidate to participate. Our very own Laxus Dreyer. His opponent will be Jiraiya. The crowd was enthusiastic with their applause, but that did nothing to stop the pang of anger in Laxus's heart at how subdued it was compared to when they had cheered Uzumaki. Frowning, Laxus left the tent and walked to the center of the stage, scrutinizing the person standing next to Elfman. The first thing he noticed was how tall Jiraiya was. The man was a little over 6 feet tall, only a few inches taller than Laxus, who was quite tall even by adult standards. His eyes moved to his clothing and arched. Jiraiya wore a green short-sleeved kimono and matching trousers, beneath which he wore chainmail armor that revealed the sleeves and legs of his outfit with his red haori. On his back was a large scroll, which confused Laxus slightly. Why would he bring that here? Stopping right in front of Jiraiya, Laxus grinned at the older man, who returned the smile with a smug grin. Ready to lose, Grandpa? Laxus sneered, small bursts of lightning crackling around his body. Jiraiya laughed heartily, his laughter the laugh of an adult who had been forced to take a child seriously. Laxus's smile vanished at his actions, replaced by an angry frown. Calming himself after his brief fit of laughter, Jiraiya placed his hands on his hips in a relaxed manner. The day I lose is the day I can finally kick the bucket. Come on, kid, let's see what you've got. Begin. Laxus was the first to begin. Immediately after the word left Elfman's throat, he was in front of the Gamma Sennin in the blink of an eye. He struck with a knee to Jiraiya's torso that made the Sennin double over in pain. His left fist shot out toward Jiraiya's face and sent him flying due to the extreme force and speed behind him. As Jiraiya was sent crashing to the ground, Laxus kept his hands outstretched and began firing countless rounds of small, rapid-fire beams to maintain the pressure on his opponent. His other hand, which had been gathering magical energy, joined the assault with slow but explosive beams that, combined with a ferocious blast, would keep Jiraiya at bay. When Jiraiya was sent rolling, he swallowed the instinctive curse that threatened to escape his lips. "That hit wasn't so bad," he grudgingly remarked. Turning to avoid falling backward, he quickly looked up and saw rounds of lightning hurtling toward him with intense hunger. Leaping to his feet, Jiraiya began running around the stadium, pumping chakra into his legs to evade Laxus's relentless assault. As he zigzagged through the maze of lightning, he absent-mindedly assessed Laxus's strategy. "He's keeping me on the defensive, trying to force me to think of more ways to escape his traps and reveal the full extent of my abilities." In fact, he focused the chakra into his legs, tensing as his hands clouded through the seals. "I'd better start taking him seriously." Jinten. Muaisho. Rapid throw. Shadowless flight. Firing forward at speeds he had only imagined moving in his dreams, Jiraiya's form vanished and he began to spin his head, as well as a dizzying game of ducking, weaving, leaping, and maneuvering through the barrage of lightning that Laxus kept fueling with his magic. To those watching, it was as if Jiraiya's movements were rapidly ahead of him across the entire terrain, with several copies of himself trailing behind the real one. Laxus smiled victoriously as he felt Jiraiya's punch hurtling toward his face. Sensing it coming from the right, he ducked, tilting his head to the right, and let himself fall with the momentum. When Jiraiya momentarily slowed down, clearly not expecting Laxus to feel his attack, Laxus slammed his right palm into the ground, simultaneously unleashing the magic he had been gathering in his left leg. His leg crackled with lightning as he shouted his attack. Renkyaku, Storm Leg. His lightning-infused leg slammed into Jiraiya with devastating force, making him cry out in pain. Laxus's grin deepened until Jiraiya appeared in a puff of smoke. Shock wiped the smug expression from his face, his eyes bulged, and his mouth fell open as he stared in disbelief at what had just happened. A Sengen, Spiral Sphere. The ground beneath him exploded as a blue sphere slammed into his insides, sending him flying through the air. Gritting his teeth in pain and thrown high above ground level, Laxus opened one eye to see Jiraiya standing beside a hole that had been directly beneath him. His eyes widened in realization. That's it. The two types of magic he used were speed magic and earth magic. As he charged his body with magic, his form flickered and transformed into a lightning bolt before shooting towards the ground. When he landed, the gong sounded, signaling the end of his trial. Grimacing at the wound on his body, Laxus waited for Jiraiya to emerge from his hole before beginning his observations. "You used speed magic to avoid my lightning barrage and try to take a few hits. When I used Renkyaku, you must have used clone magic as you approached to confuse and disorient me. Finally, for that last attack of yours, you used earth magic to hide beneath me, though I have no idea how you managed to land it." Raising an eyebrow at the slightly panting boy, Jiraiya nodded with a smile. Pretty perceptive to pick up on those details while in the middle of a fight. Most people focus solely on defeating their enemies to end the fight, especially when they have no idea what they're capable of. Jiraiya cupped his chin thoughtfully and hummed for a few moments before speaking. "You're passing. I didn't expect you to pick up the clone bit, just the first and last. My advice to you would be to brush up on a few more types of magic before going out on your first S-class elicitation. If you had done that, you would have noticed that my last attack falls under energy make." He chuckled as Laxus slapped his face, muttering curses that were barely audible over the wind. Second tent. When Laxus entered, taking a good look at his bandaged torso, Makarov glanced at Kana. "Very well, Kana, since we're going in the order of those who were chosen, that means you'll be the next participant. Good luck." Nodding with a resolute expression, the brunette rose from her seat and marched through the store's flaps toward the stadium. Fairy Tale Exam Grounds. With a slight grimace at the sudden glare, Kana blinked furiously to clear the smudges from her eyes as she nervously walked toward the center of the grounds. When her vision cleared and she no longer needed to blink, her eyes fixed curiously on the woman standing beside Elfman. That curiously quickly turned into surprise and embarrassment as he looked at the woman's clothes. The woman had light brown eyes without pupils and black hair with a blue tint, styled in a short, spiky, fanned-out ponytail. Possessing a curvaceous figure that some of the guild girls would surely acquire as they grew older, her choice of clothing was questionable at best, atrocious at worst. A light brown coat with purple stitching that barely concealed her skin-tight mesh suit, which stretched from her neck to her thighs. An orange miniskirt was the only thing that salvaged any modesty, connected to a dark blue belt with a sash resembling an appendage. Shin guards and sandals completed the woman's ensemble. "Oh my god," glancing quickly at the stands, Kana confirmed her fear. Every man was staring at her, unquestioning of her intentions. Groaning inwardly, Kana trudged toward her opponent in exasperation. "Why am I the one who ended up having to fight a prostitute?" Muttering incoherently, Kana sighed as she approached the brazen woman. Up close and personal with her, Kana swore she saw a glimpse of the woman's nipple as she puffed out her chest. Fuck my life. Skip time. Naruto crossed his arms as he left the tent with the other candidates, each wearing their game faces. The knowledge test had served its purpose. It had shown how they reacted when faced with an opponent wielding unknown magic, tested their knowledge of different types of magic, and demonstrated their level of preparedness when confronted with the unexpected. However, it was the test of knowledge that revealed the differences between them. When Kana faced Anko, the young brunette found herself on the receiving end of a kick in the rear that had inflamed the crowd against Anko. She had only been able to identify two types of magic Anko used, namely poison and speed magic, but she had suffered numerous injuries of varying severity. If the disappointed look in her eyes was any indication, she had clearly expected Kana to do better. Urza's opponent had been incredibly annoying. Keeping her on the run with wooden stakes launched from the ground, she was forced to remain in her flight armor to avoid the assault. To make matters worse, Tenzo had transformed the entire area into a large wet expanse of earth, which he then manipulated into a continuous landslide. Urza had to resort to performing multiple requips in a split second in midair. Switching from her flight armor to move faster than ever before to her black wing armor to soar into the sky. She seemed satisfied with her performance, though she had engaged in a conversation with Setsuna to work on her mistakes. Unlike the last round, Murahin managed to complete the trial 30 seconds before the time limit expired. Juugo had used a type of acquisition magic that transformed him into a monster form, increasing his abilities several times over. The second magic he used was an animal-based version of puppet magic she had heard about, using animals like birds to attack his enemies. Setsuna's combination hadn't been what they expected. Instead of fighting, she and Chijuro stared at each other for a while before Chijuro revealed the three types of magic he used in a calm, emotionless tone. Many people learned a lesson that day. Setsuna was unnaturally skilled at casting high-level illusions. His own fight with Menma had been disappointingly short due to the 2-minute limit, but it had been fun while it lasted. He wondered if the crowd and the Magic Council would react to the aerial battle he'd just been in. Maybe they were shitting their pants. That would be pretty funny if it actually happened. They were now preparing for the next test. Laxa stood farther away, arms crossed, alternating between shooting Naruto glances and staring at Murahin with that strange expression he'd seen when he arrived. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. Looks like someone doesn't like a certain demon getting near me. He'd have to keep an eye on Laxus's jealousy. Well, it was normal for things like that to happen. The hatred Laxus felt for him seemed unpleasant. As Naruto watched Laxus with a veil of interest, Murahin and Urza were off to the side, deep in conversation. "So, how do you find the S-class tests, Mira?" Urza asked, her arms crossed over her armored chest as she regarded her rival with interest. For the past 6 months, she'd barely had much time for a proper conversation with her rival. Between demanding job requests that consumed most of her time, training with her most skilled and powerful friend, and generally trying to keep the guild running smoothly, Urza had very little time for herself. Add to that the fact that Murahin had also been busy for half a year, obviously trying to improve. Murahin grunted noncommittally, waving her hand in a regular manner. "It's not as easy as I thought, that's for sure. Still, I don't have an opinion on it yet. When I'm finished, I'll tell you what I think." Urza looked at her strangely. "And what are your thoughts on our chances of becoming S-class?" His response was swift. "It's not an opportunity. We're competing against Naruto-kun," he began, ticking off the names, Laxus and Setsuna. "Any one of those guys could beat us, despite our improvements, and Kana simply pales in comparison. This is nothing more than an exhibition event for us, to show us how tough they are and force us to improve to reach the next level." His eyes met Urza's with unusual intensity, silently daring her to contradict the words he had just spoken. Urza sighed, averting her eyes from Mira's and stepping back slightly. "I see, that's why you didn't take the first test as seriously as you could have." Murahin nodded silently, her gaze softening to a more cheerful tone. "From my perspective, we're the lucky ones who got to experience the exam first. Next time, we'll kick so much butt that the master will have to create a new rule to prevent it from collapsing." She smiled at the thought. "Though I'll obviously become an S-class mage before you, metal tits." Betting a mark on that, Urza smiled dangerously at Murahin. "HMPH. As always, you bark your lips all day but never do it. If anything, I'll become an S-class mage a year before you." Before their conversation could escalate, Makarov's footsteps drew the attention of each participant and drew them closer. The old man stopped right in the center of the group, a position that was becoming his usual haunt, and crossed his arms. "All right, brats, this is the final test you'll undertake in this exam. I know I said we'd have 3 tests and a battle royale, but it was decided that the last 2 events should be held simultaneously to avoid dragging this exam out for too long." Leveling each of them with a proud yet admonishing look, Makarov delivered the rest of his news. "The final event for you is to last at least 5 minutes in battle against stronger enemies in superior numbers. Each of you will fight alone. The time limit will be half an hour. To make things more difficult. Upon hearing this news, the participants had their own reactions. Laxa smiled at it, happy to have the opportunity to fight against the ace of fairy tale. Naruto and Satsuna raised their eyebrows with interest. Urza gained a determined look, Murahin paled slightly, but cracked her knuckles threateningly, and Kana swallowed audibly. Seeing the looks on their faces, Makarov smiled grimly. As I said before, the goal here is to last at least 5 minutes. You don't need to defeat any of your opponents to pass. I wish you the best of luck in this test. I hope all of you good mages will become S-class mages by the end of the day. Chuckling at the thought, Makarov headed toward the stands. Heading towards the gardens, Naruto raised an eyebrow at the sight of Gildert's Clive looking at him with a hint of irritation. He wasn't sure what he'd done to warrant that glare, but he didn't really care. Soon the S-class exam would be over, and he could return home and pay his respects to Satsuna's body as he often did. He shook his head slightly, banishing the thought of Satsuna's naked form from his mind. Now's not the time to get an erection that would be embarrassing and send the wrong message to those watching. Walking toward the others, who had moved to the center of the grounds, Naruto allowed a smile to spread across his face. So what should I use? Fire Dragon Slayer magic is a must. It'll leave those old fogies on the council shaking in their boots. Awarimi is also a must. I think I should take it easy on the others and save the big guns for Gildert's. I wonder how he fights. All contestants ready. Elfman bellowed, his hand raised in the air, ready to signal the start of the final challenge. Seeing no objections, he lowered his hand in a swift cut. Begin. The fist of lightning hurtled toward Naruto. Laxus moved at his absolute speed, hoping to catch the blonde boy off guard. As his fist made contact and a groan of pain and surprise escaped his target's lips, Laxus's smug smile appeared. And he was swiftly knocked back by the stupidly fast blow that crashed directly into his face. The distinctive cracking of bones and cartilage could be heard. Flying backward with a grunt of pain, Laxus's body vanished in a flash and shot into the sky. Ignoring Laxus's retreat, Naruto charged forward with a kick that quickly landed near Murahin. Using her momentum, she performed a front flip, intending to land a spinning kick to Naruto's head as she prepared her soul extinction spell. Grimacing slightly as her kick was expertly blocked by Naruto's left hand, she cast her spell, and a miniature black ball of crackling energy appeared. Soul extinction. She shouted, aiming it directly at his face. Pushing his right hand toward the spell, a Rasengan of equal size appeared with 3 even smaller ones swirling around it. Mini Wakusei Rasengan. He whispered the jutsu's name as it crashed into Murahin's spell. The results were explosive. When Naruto's jutsu made contact with Mira's spell, the distorted rotations of the individual Rasengans, created by the central ones and the smaller ones spinning in different directions, interacted with each other to form a massive turbulent wave-like vortex that pulled Murahin into the atmosphere. At the same time, Mira's soul extinction had fired in a large, destructive yet concentrated beam of energy that fought tooth and nail against Naruto's jutsu. Smiling at his predicament, Naruto swiftly severed the jutsu, allowing Murahin's attack to pierce through the remaining chakra and hurtle toward him, before substituting himself for Laxus, who was immersed in his lightning form. While it had been a bit awkward to replace him with lightning, he managed to pull it off and watched a black bolt strike the other blonde directly. Landing on his feet like a cat, Naruto briefly admired the damage caused by the spell, before turning his attention to Urza, who was facing Satsuna and Kana. As far as he could see, no one had engaged Gildert's yet, and the older man seemed pleased about it. Gathering chakra in his throat, Naruto leaped into the air and unleashed a fire dragon's roar at Gildert's. After reading Gildert's file, he had become very curious about the man's shock and dismantle magic. As the flame attack accelerated toward Gildert's, a shadow clone appeared next to the original and extended its hands toward a descending Murahin. Wind release. Divine Fist of the Wind God. The gust of wind in the shape of a fist slammed into the takeover mage and sent her flying straight toward the female attack happening at a distance. The original, on the other hand, was watching Gildert's in action. When the stream of fire shot toward him, the old man reached out into the flames. His hand glowed faintly with white light, and the next thing Naruto knew, his flames exploded in a brilliant flash. What the hell? Surprised to see Gildert's magic in action, Naruto barely managed to catch Urza's downward slash. Growling slightly, he brutally slammed his head against hers and shrugged at the now disoriented mage requip. Fire Dragon Iron Fist. A blazing right hook sent Urza skidding backward, reeling from the force of the blow. Seizing the opportunity, Naruto kicked the redeed and grabbed her leg as she stumbled. Spinning her around once, twice, and 3 times, he threw her straight into Satsuna's path and fired at Laxus, who was whirling around in his lightning body, trying to land as many blows as he could on anyone he could find. Of course, he was dissuaded from his objective by Satsuna's appearance in the typical leaf shunshin, Kurohime descending in a vertical slash. Quick as Urza's requiping, Samahata appeared in his hands and blocked Kurohime's descent. Naruto and Setsuna narrowed their eyes at each other, their Sharingan locked in a battle of wits. Their hands went through different hand seals with one hand, though Naruto's chain sequence was shorter. Pain. Goku Mikakyu. Fire release. Great fire annihilation. Benten. Kakuin no Tate. Blaze launch. Black flame shield. When Naruto's crimson-tinged flames descended upon the stage, Setsuna enveloped herself in black flames that took the form of a protective cocoon, withstanding the heat. Behind her, the other competitors did their best to avoid the flames they hurled at the grounds. Laxus and Murahin took to the skies, the former using her lightning body spell, while the latter used her partial takeover spell to escape her damaged form. Urza simply required her Flame Empress armor the second she saw the flames and was attacking Kana, who was growing stronger despite the heat. Gildertz only used his crash magic to disperse the flames before they reached him, though he squinted at the large-scale fire spell Naruto had cast. He clenched his fist as he watched Naruto and Setsuna move away, their blades clashing and striking with killing intent. These two, no matter what the master says, they must be kept under constant surveillance. No one in fairy tale should strike another with malicious intent. Her frown deepened as she watched Naruto switch places with Murahin to avoid Setsuna's Chidori, Thousand Birds. Surprised by the sudden turn of events, Murahin ended up taking the moderately powerful lightning jutsu right in the chest. Fortunately for her, the 5-minute bell rang, and she collapsed to the ground, unconscious as her acquisition spell ended. Makarov, who was watching the event from his seat in the stands, frowned at Gildertz. The man hadn't moved an inch the entire time, only reacting defensively when an attack came too close. What was he thinking? Gildertz, why aren't you fighting back like you should? Is your opinion of Naruto so bad that you can't keep your eye on the target? His old eyes brightened slightly as Gildertz finally made his move. 1 step. 2 steps. A light trot. Full speed ahead. However, as he charged toward his target, Makarov's eyes widened. Surprisingly, it wasn't Naruto he was after. Laxus had no idea what had happened. One minute he and Urza were exchanging blows, the next he was slammed to the ground with a force that instantly knocked him unconscious. Urza only had time to try and defend herself before Gildertz extinguished her lights with a swift strike. The two shinobi halted their skirmish and watched the scene with calculating intent. As Gildertz turned toward Kana, who seemed to shrink into herself, Setsuna glanced at Naruto, a question forming within them. Now? He blinked once. Yes. Nodding deliberately, Setsuna raised her hand. I wish to withdraw. I have already accomplished the required task and do not wish to continue. Elfman nodded sympathetically and shouted, Setsuna Uchiha withdraws. The only remaining competitor is Naruto Uzumaki. The crowd roared with approval, eagerly anticipating Fairy Tail's ace clashing with the Demon King. Some were disappointed that Setsuna hadn't stayed to fight, but he sat more upright in anticipation of the next match. Staring intently at the blonde man, Gildertz gently laid the unconscious Kana on the ground and stood up. So, you're the one they call the Demon King, huh? Naruto raised an eyebrow as he hoisted Samehada onto his shoulder, ignoring their whispers. What about her? Gildertz felt excited, despite his feelings about the boy. Nothing. I just thought you'd be something bigger than you actually look. Some rumors say you can kick at least 3 mountains with one kick. Naruto collapsed, sweating profusely. Where did that come from? Shifting his weight, he now held Samehada towards Gildertz in defiance. Well, are you ready to fight? Gildertz frowned. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm not good at holding back, and you've been struggling for a while now. Are you sure you don't want to take a break? Sure, he was eager to hit the kid, but he at least had to offer him a chance to back down before things got too rough. Naruto frowned. His body posture remained the same, except for the clenching of his hands. They both tensed. They both jumped. Time jump. In the safety of his study, Naruto opened the scroll Jiraiya had dropped earlier from his arm. With Setsuna back at the guild celebrating with Urza on becoming S-class mages, the house was quiet and semi-peaceful. Looking back at the scroll, Naruto frowned. The scroll was much shorter than I'd initially thought. That was pretty bad. Jiraiya always sent reports that were quite convoluted and full of ridiculous statements. For him to send such a short message, something bad must have happened. Breaking the seal that protected the scroll from prying eyes, Naruto unfolded the scroll and read. He has been caught by the wind of his exploits. Murahin Strauss is one of his targets. Damned father. The scroll slipped through Naruto's fingers, falling to the ground as his eyes popped out. No way, no way. One of Jiraiya's methods for conveying confidential information was to conceal the message within inactive text. The first words of each sentence contained the message, preventing others unfamiliar with the trick from being fooled. If I rearranged the message, it would be explained like this. He is Murahin Strauss's father. Naruto frowned at this news. I knew I should have tagged him back then. Clenching and unclenching his fist, he breathed shakily. Opening his eyes, a cold fire burned within them. Well, Elfman supposedly wanted me to help his sisters. Why on earth did all this happen to him? Penru Island. The sleeping figure lay curled in a ball, its face settling into a peaceful expression as it slept. When it turned over, a large spider could be seen crawling towards it. Just as he got close enough to the figure, a wave of black energy surged forward and disintegrated it from existence. The sleeper's face tightened. Tucson. Chapter 14. Celestial Spirit Mage, Lullaby and a Date Part 1. Within the small town of Harjan, the hustle and bustle of daily life continued as people awoke and went about their day. Each offered the other a friendly smile, a warm greeting, and a cheerful wave as they interacted except for one particular individual. Walking through Harjan with a disappointed gait, the young woman glanced around the area. She had brown eyes and shoulder-length blonde hair, tied back with colorful ribbons and a small ponytail on the right side of her head, the rest of her hair loose. What most people noticed, men and some women in particular, were her ridiculously large breasts, barely contained by the white and blue striped blouse she wore. Her curvaceous figure, adorned with a blue skirt that barely reached mid-thigh, along with the aforementioned blouse, drew glances and attention wherever she went. Her brown belt, which seemed to be the only thing holding up her blouse and skirt, also had several different keys attached. A whip was coiled around her as well, its heart-shaped end inspiring some men's questionable fantasies. Her black leather high-heeled boots formed soft bulges as she strolled through Harjan. Sighing in despair, Lucy Herfilia ran a hand through her hair. Great, just great. Not a single shop selling anything magic-related. Damn. Huffing at her predicament, the blonde decided to head back to her hotel. She sighed as she walked through the streets. Talk about disappointing. Excuse me, a young man called out as Lucy passed a library. His call startled her from her reverie, making her jump slightly and turn toward him. He was quite ordinary. He had that indescribable "I've got nothing going for me in life" look that some of the younger generation seem to possess these days. Are you looking for a Magic the Gathering store in town? I couldn't help but overhear your comments, and I'd like to offer you some help, he said, giving the busty blonde a polite bow. Looking at the man with something close to disdain, Lucy nevertheless found her curiosity piqued. Really? I've been everywhere and haven't been able to find a single Magic the Gathering store. She crossed her arms over her chest, unknowingly pushing them up and making them look larger than they were. Are you trying to pull a dumb blonde joke or something? The man shook his head wildly, trying to keep his eye from darting up his chest. No, nothing like that. My great-uncle just runs a shop a couple of blocks away and business hasn't been booming for him lately, he explained. When I heard you were looking for a magic shop, I had the idea to bring you there to help his business out and maybe even help bring in more customers for him. Lucy gave him a deep, penetrating look as he nervously shifted position, trying to sense any deception or ill intent from the stranger. After a few moments, she shrugged and gestured with her hand. All right, I suppose I could let you escort me there, though I'm warning you, if this is some kind of joke. Her raised fist made the man chuckle uncomfortably. Sure. Follow me, it's a bit confusing to follow this route. Harjan Station. Meanwhile, at Harjan Station, a small crowd had gathered around Terminal 1, watching with blatant surprise and amusement as they were being treated. In the center of the crowd were three individuals, two men and a woman. One of the men was hunched over on the floor, trying to hold back the vomit that was struggling to escape his stomach, while the other two just sighed in exasperation. The small blue cat was also beside the motion-sickened guy, patting him on the back like a child and trying to calm his best friend. Natsu, isn't it a shame that a train can kick you, but not even try? Of course, what he thought was relaxing was something completely different to the fallen dragon slayer. Natsu had grown since the S-class exams. His hair had become even spikier than before, sticking out in so many different directions that it now resembled a rat's nest, according to Gray. His clothes hadn't changed, except for the fact that they were now larger, and his physique had become deceptively thin and scaly looking. Now standing at almost twice his previous height, the young mage had grown quite well. Suppressing the urge to vomit over Happy, Natsu directed what he hoped would be an angry glare at Happy, but ended up looking genuinely constipated. Shut up, Happy. Ugh, I don't feel so good. He groaned. The woman laughed wearily at the situation, mentally wondering if she would have to do this for her boyfriend every time they were together. Putting on a pair of gloves, she approached Natsu and knelt beside him. Wait, Natsu-kun, I'll take care of you, she said. Pressing her gloved palm against his forehead, a light green energy enveloped her hand, and within seconds Natsu's nausea subsided. Removing her palm from his head, she stood up with a satisfied look on her face. That should do it, right, Natsu-kun? Jumping to his feet, the now healthy Natsu burst into a grateful smile. Thank you for healing me, I feel so much better now. You're the best, Lisanna. Like her boyfriend, Lisanna had changed over the years. Her short hairstyle had been replaced by a shoulder-length one with nicely curled ends. She'd also grown taller, standing a centimeter shorter than Natsu. Her simple pink dress and red shoes had been traded for a black vest, a blue t-shirt, blue jeans with a silver chain, and black shoes with blue tights. Her figure had become more feminine and attracted a fair amount of attention from men. Her large breasts and curvy figure made some mutter, "Lucky bastard," under their breath. The third figure simply laughed at the scene. "How about we get going before you two start making out? We're on a tight schedule, and I don't want to hear your brother talking about real men who are punctual for dates, Lisanna." She rolled her eyes at him, ignoring the atomic blush that had erupted on Natsu's face at her words. "Oh, please, you just want to go back and do unspeakable things with Setsuna and Mirani, Naruto," she accused, her tone playful and light. Naruto winked slyly and started heading toward the town. Of all the guild members, Naruto had changed the least. He still wore the outfit he'd worn since his early days in Fairy Tail, though he often donned a short-sleeved version when the heat became too much for his liking, and he still had a sword strapped to his back. However, the sword wasn't Samehada. It was wrapped in black cloth, but shaped like the fang of a large dog. The blade was fastened tightly to his back, almost dangling there from his thoughts. The length of his hair had changed as well. Instead of keeping it uniformly short, he grew the right side out while keeping the left short, resulting in the right side of his face being partially covered by his hair. It certainly resembled a short version of Madara's hairstyle, though it was shoulder length. "Come on." Turning to Natsu, Lisanna raised an eye. "Come on, Natsu-kun, let's go." Leaping towards their sensei, Natsu and Happy followed, and the group entered Harjan town. Meanwhile, Lucy found herself examining the items in Harjan's only magic shop with disappointment. Most of the items the old man had were very weak, made for entertaining tricks rather than battles. Sighing once more, she turned to the old man in charge. "Sorry to bother you, but do you have keys to the door?" she asked as she approached him at the counter. The old man frowned thoughtfully at her request. "Now that I think about it, I believe I have some gate keys in stock somewhere. Give me a minute, I hope a customer comes to pick up their order." Walking toward the back of the shop, Lucy stared at the old man's back with little hope. Maybe coming here wasn't such a complete waste of time after all. She thought to herself. Walking to a different part of the store, she rummaged through some items, searching for something interesting in the pile. After several minutes of searching, Lucy was pulled from her activity by the opening of the door and a set of footsteps heading toward the counter. Peeking out of the corner of her eye, Lucy gasped in shock and amazement at the person who had just entered the dull, boring shop she was in. Quickly zipping up the zipper behind the nearby aisle, she covered her mouth with her hands, trying to stifle the fangirl scream that longed to be unleashed. "Oh my god. It's Naruto Uzumaki, the demon king of Fairy Tail in the flesh." Quickly uttering a prayer of thanks to whatever deity might be listening, she stood up and grabbed the nearest object before slowly making her way to the counter. Naruto quickly approached the counter and rang the bell. "Hey, hee. Don't tell me you haven't finished your favorite customer's order." He leaned against the counter as the man came running back, a bright smile on his face. "Well, if it isn't Naruto-kun. It's been a while since you stopped here. Are you and young Miss Strauss alright?" The man tapped a wrapped box in front of the blonde wizard, making him raise an eyebrow. The box was about the size of Happy and covered with purple wrapping paper, which made Naruto smile slightly at the old man's choice of color. "The sand is fine. By the way, she sends her regards." Sliding the package through a seal, Naruto crossed his arms and straightened up. "So, how much was it again?" he asked, searching his pocket for his shirt. The old man frowned. "Are you leaving already? You usually stay for a drink or a bite to eat before you go." "Excuse me," a new voice interrupted, causing Naruto and the old man to shift their attention to Lucy, who had her arms crossed and was trying to look annoyed. The effect was ruined by the blush on her face, as well as the fact that her eyes were still drifting toward Naruto. "I think you were going to give me some keys to the door. Did something happen to them?" she prompted. Naruto looked at the old man questioningly as the man simply patted his fist as if he'd just remembered. "Oh, I almost forgot about that. I'm coming, miss." Heading back to wherever he'd gone the first time, the old man left the shop in a slightly awkward silence. Now that she was rid of the shopkeeper, Lucy found herself struggling to find a way to break the ice between herself and the famous mage. Could I talk about the weather?" "No, that's overused your sword." "No, what if he asks me why I'm interested?" "Erg. Damn it, Lucy, you should have thought this through more." She mentally scolded herself, nervously glancing anywhere but in Naruto's direction. A laugh pulled her from her thoughts, her blush deepening at the sound of his voice. "Hello, I'm fairly certain you know who I am, but I'll introduce myself anyway. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, though I'm also known as Demon King." He began, turning his body until he had her full attention. "So you're a celestial spirit mage, miss?" Swallowing her gasp at the Demon King speaking to her, Lucy found herself stammering as she hurriedly introduced herself. "Why, you can call me Al Lucy." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Uzumaki-san," she blurted out, bowing rapidly. Straightening her posture, she giggled nervously at the amused look he was giving her. "Yes, I use celestial spirits as a mage." Naruto smiled. "That's quite interesting, Lucy-san. Out of curiosity, how many keys do you have?" The old man chose this moment to return, holding a small wooden box with a silver pattern. As he brushed it against Naruto's palm, he skillfully and surreptitiously dropped a slip of paper into Naruto's hand. Naruto immediately closed his palm and slipped the note into his pocket while the old man kept Lucy occupied with her key to the door. Accepting the box from the man, Lucy turned her inquisitive and happy eyes toward the old man. "How much does the dog key door cost?" she asked. The old man made a victory sign. 20,000 jewels, no discounts or sales included. Lucy froze, her happiness evaporating like water in the desert as the price floated through her mind. "Damn, I can't afford to spend that much. How am I ever going to pay the rent?" She approached the old man, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Excuse me, how much did you say it was again?" 20,000 jewels. Before Lucy could even begin to think about using her hex appeal to try and strike a deal with the old man, Naruto stepped forward with a huge wad of jewel bills. "This should cover both my order and your gate key, right, Gigi?" He ignored the surprised look Lucy was giving him and handed the bills to the old man, who counted them with a satisfied expression on his face. "Well, that settles everything. See you later, Naruto-kun. Don't be a stranger." Naruto greeted the man and gestured for the surprised girl to follow him. Upon exiting the shop, Naruto only had to wait 2 seconds before Lucy also burst out. "Naruto-san, wait." Seeing her run toward him, Naruto stopped and waited for her to catch up. As she did, she looked at him with a conflicted expression. "Why? Why did you pay for the door key there? I mean, I appreciate the gesture, but we barely know each other and it's strange for someone to do that for me," she explained. Naruto shrugged slightly. "Well, I guess you have a point, but I just felt like helping you out back there. You seem to be having some financial difficulties, so I decided to put my earnings to good use besides, that was a drop in the ocean compared to what I make in a day. I wasn't losing anything, I was only gaining," he explained, nodding his head at a nearby clock. "Lisana and Natsu should have finished by now. You'd better hurry and meet them downtown." Understanding his actions and correctly interpreting the meaning behind them, Lucy mustered her courage and asked the question that had been dying inside her ever since she'd seen him in that shop. "Oh no, thank you for your help, I hope I'm not being pushy," she began, nervously clasping her hands behind her back, "but I was wondering if you could help me join Fairy Tail." Naruto blinked. "Do you want to join Fairy Tail?" She clasped her hands together, making her breasts bounce in a way that Naruto was tempted to stare. "Yes, it's been a goal of mine for quite some time. I've been dreaming of joining since I was little. Fairy Tail is so cool, wild, and exciting. Especially the S-class mages, like you and Murahin." She seemed to enter her own world, the stars twinkling around her as she daydreamed about the powerful mages within the guild. Naruto paused, his eyes scanning her in a flash before settling on his keys in the door. "Fairy Tail doesn't have any celestial spirit mages, so I don't see why Makarov wouldn't let her join," nodding once, his eyes twinkling with amusement as Lucy's eyes lit up. "Sure, why don't you come with me? Some other guild members came with me, so I plan to meet them downtown at 1 o'clock, which is in 5 minutes. He suggested, his eyes glancing at the nearby clock. Lucy's enthusiasm was all he needed to hear. Lisana and Natsu, city center. Things weren't going so well for the young couple. Earlier in the day, Natsu had heard a rumor that Salamander from Fairy Tail was performing at 1 o'clock. Normally, that wouldn't have bothered him, but as far as he knew, it was Salamander, and he hadn't even considered performing in front of the guild, let alone some random strangers. So, since this was very personal for Natsu, they had gone to see the impostor and possibly removed the tar. As they walked toward the city center, they could make out the large crowd of women shouting Salamander, interspersed with more than a few expressions of love. As they drew closer, Lisana began to feel something strange. Her body temperature started to rise faster, almost like it did whenever she saw Natsu, and her face began to feel hot. As they approached the crowd, the sensation intensified. Her eyes sharpened as she recognized the magic being used. Magic charm, how despicable and highly suspicious. Why would he be using illegal magic in broad daylight? What will he say when he's caught? Freeing herself from the magic, Lisana pulled Natsu closer and scanned the faces of the girls present. As she suspected, they were all under the impostor's control. Pushing her way through the various women, Lisana managed to get a good look at the salamander. He was a relatively tall, slender man with short, spiky blue hair that stuck out, with a long fringe hanging over the upper left side of his face. He had a slightly rectangular face with sharp features, dark eyes, and thin, dark eyebrows. His most distinctive facial feature was the dark tattoo that covered the right side of his forehead, just above his right eyebrow. She wore ornate clothing, the most visible piece being a dark, high-collared cloak that reached almost to her knees. It had a lighter lining and light edges adorned with a pattern of many diamonds aligned one after the other. It fastened a few centimeters below her neck with a clasp decorated with a stylized flame. Underneath her cloak, she wore a simple, lightweight, short-sleeved shirt with outlined edges, paired with light striped trousers with visible hems, held up by a simple belt covered with elegant dots concealed by her shirt. She also wore polished dark shoes with lighter soles and a lighter upper that extended from the front of her ankle. She also sported 3 large metal bracelets around her right wrist and forearm. "Natsu," she whispered, catching his attention. "This guy's using charm magic on those girls." She shuddered in disgust as the impostor brazenly began groping one of the curvy girls. "If we don't stop him, he'll not only drag your reputation through the mud, but he'll also make the Magic Council even angrier with Fairy Tail." Natsu immediately became enraged with that blue-haired bastard. "What? Leave him alone. I'll make him pay for messing with Fairy Tail's name." He clenched his fists, preparing to carry out his words, when Lysana grabbed him. Lysana restrained Natsu as she growled at the impostor, who was using very low-level fire magic to dazzle the crowd. "Natsu-kun, calm down. Kick him in the butt after he breaks the charm spell, not before." She whispered furiously in his ear. "Honestly, he gets so excited sometimes I want to punch him." Happy, who had been staring intently at the man from the sky, gasped loudly. "Natsu, Lysana. I know that mage." Rushing to his foster parents, Happy relayed the information he had about the man. "That's Bora the Prominence, a former member of the Titan Nose Guild. He was expelled for using his magic to aid in theft and was rumored to be involved in slavery. The Magic Council has put a bounty on his head because he allegedly stole some important documents they want to recover." The Fire Dragon Slayer toned down his demeanor, glaring at Bora as he continued his flamboyant performance. "So, if I happen to capture this guy and bring him to the Magic Council, would that put Fairy Tail in a good light?" he asked, cracking his knuckles in anticipation. Happy nodded. "Yes." Lysana shrugged, her attention shifting to dispelling the effects of the charm. Just as Naruto had taught her, she manipulated her magical energy to flow through the bodies of the girls around her. Had she attempted this 4 years ago, it would have been beyond her capabilities and she would have struggled to achieve even such fine control. Now, she could do it instantly, applying even greater force to disrupt the flow of the beaver's magic. It was a technique that Naruto had taught him. Genjutsu Kai, Genjutsu Dissipation. When she released her magic from the women's bodies, who suddenly blinked in confusion and were no longer lustful, she turned to Natsu and nodded. "Go kick his ass." He grinned. "With pleasure." Walking toward Bora, Natsu's grin turned shark-like. This was how he was going to enjoy this one. "Hey, flame impostor," he yelled. As Bora turned around, a mocking smirk on his lips, Natsu's fist slammed into his face. The blow crashed against Bora's face with enough force to break his nose, and the Dragon Slayer heard the sharp crack of his cartilage. As Bora staggered backward, he spat out blood and broken teeth. Glaring at Natsu, Bora growled. "Who the hell are?" Natsu grinned as flames began to engulf his body. "Let me show you how to really use fire magic. Asa Nuatori, Morning Chicken." Naruto and Lucy. The two blondes were heading towards the city center, passing a spring along their path or, to be precise, Lucy was strolling along while Naruto walked towards his cute students. They had certainly grown since he started teaching them. He chuckled fondly as he recalled various parts of his training. Natsu fell before the Senengarashi just as he had when he was a child. Murahin continually threw herself from the water into the air while practicing water walking. Gray bumped into his ice every time he messed up the Makyo Demon Mirror Ice Crystals. Kana was forced to search for him every time she got trapped in an animal's body, and Lysana caused craters every time she touched something. Elfman still managed to get rid of him, but due to the increase in job requests, he had disappeared from the guild at random intervals. The sudden explosion jolted him out of his reverie, and he sighed in exasperation as Lucy stared at the blast in shock. "What the hell? What happened?" she yelled. Naruto placed his hand on her shoulder, urging her to turn and face him. He had a tired expression on his face that did nothing to calm her nerves. "Unfortunately, that's something you'll have to get used to if you join Fairy Tail. Judging by the explosion and the amount of fire, it's probably Natsu, that stupid brat." He started walking languidly toward the source of the explosion. Lucy quickened her pace until she was drifting beside him, curiosity etched on her face. "Wait a minute, you mean Natsu the salamander is here in Harjan with you?" At his silent nod, she fired off another question. "Is it true he can use fire in so many ways, like flying with it, eating it, and even using it to grab things?" Naruto glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. "Why don't we ask her that in person?" Natsu was having fun kicking Bora all over town. I mean, who wouldn't want the chance to punish someone trying to impersonate him and use his reputation to get them into trouble? Besides, Bora's actions would have made anyone who encountered him view Fairy Tail in a negative and derogatory light. That couldn't have happened on his watch. By this time, everyone except Lysana and Happy had left, screaming in fear as Bora was sent flying into various shops and stores. Natsu had to admit that the guy was pretty durable. He had used up all the strength of his ace Inuitori, but still managed to put up a decent fight, though Natsu noted that he could have defeated him even without Naruto's training. Ruerg. Die. Bora roared as he unleashed one of his most powerful spells. Typhoon Prominence. Stretching his hands out to his sides, Bora focused a large portion of his magic into the spell. A magic circle appeared on his chest, from which a spiraling column of purple fire shot out toward the dragon's slayer. Natsu grinned. Launching himself straight into the blazing fire, he reveled in the terrified look on Bora's face as he saw Natsu running straight toward him unharmed despite being engulfed in flames. Leaping toward the forger with an enhanced magic strike, Natsu's body erupted in flames far brighter than any he had seen before, blowing Bora's feeble fire away. Spinning at speeds Bora was certain were impossible, Natsu roared his attack as it landed. Fire Dragon Sword Drill. Bora screamed as Natsu's spinning headbutt slammed into his body, the flames burning him badly and the force breaking a few more bones. Not finished yet, Natsu flipped his body over while igniting his feet and fired a fire dragon claw directly at Bora's face, knocking the impostor unconscious. As Natsu backed away from his position and proceeded to drag the body, Lysana watched him do all this with a sigh. Naruto Nai isn't going to have any fun. Chapter 15. Celestial Spirit Mage, Lullaby and a Date. Part 2. Chapter 15. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime or manga that appears in this fanfic. Wham. Natsu cradled his brutally throbbing head with trembling hands, tears threatening to spill from his eyes in pain. The pain had truly forced him to crouch to the ground to deal with the agony he was feeling at this moment. Standing over his fallen body was Naruto, his eyes narrowed and his serious expression conveying the essence of his emotions. His fist was raised, obviously the same fist that had just sent Natsu hurtling into a world of pain. Are you telling me that, despite everything I told you about not drawing attention to yourself, you forgot it the moment I said it? His clipped tone spoke volumes about his current state of mind. Natsu opened one weary eye to his brother's figure. But he was using my name to impress the girls. And it would have made Fairy Tail look bad too. I couldn't just stand there and let it go. That earned him another, less painful, whack on the head. When Natsu's groans resumed, Naruto sighed in exasperation. That's why Gray would have been more suited for this sort of thing. Sure, Gray probably would have reacted the same way Natsu did, but he didn't use force from the start. Gray would call the guy out in front of the crowd, expose him for the scheming bastard he was, and only hit him if said bastard decided to throw the first punch. Natsu Naruto began, I'm not so much upset that you want to defend the guild's name. I'm not upset that you want to punish the man who tried to use your name to ruin lives and cause trouble in the lives of others. His tone had softened noticeably, but the firmness that had been there still remained. What bothers me is the fact that you didn't consider your surroundings or the effect your petty squabble had on them. Casting his gaze around the town center, Naruto was greeted by the sight of shattered stalls, burn marks, scarring buildings with unsightly black scorch, and small tongues of flame flickering on the stone grounds. Standing up with some difficulty, Natsu surveyed his work and smiled proudly. Wow, I didn't cause as much damage this time. However, I don't see what your problem is. It's not like they can't simply rebuild it. The repairs would barely affect the guild's profits, he declared, clasping his hands together behind his head. Naruto stared blankly, briefly wondering how little Natsu cared about those on the receiving end of Fairy Tail's exuberance. Oh. So what are the people whose livelihoods depend on your businesses supposed to do? Wait until you pay them back for the construction costs. How long will that take? How do you expect them to make ends meet? He took a step forward, his eyes catching the widening of Natsu's gaze and the pallor of his skin. What are you going to say to the officials about defacing private property? Huh? Natsu said nothing. What more could he say? He had been the one to carry the load recklessly, and he really needed to learn that his actions had consequences not only for himself, but also for others. Naruto gripped his shoulder firmly. You can't keep submitting job applications with this kind of attitude, Natsu. Eventually, you'll end up destroying something invaluable or of great sentimental value to the client, and then what? What could you possibly do to fix it? Is it up to them? Natsu opened and closed his mouth several times, each answer on the tip of his tongue dying in a flash as Naruto's stony face stared back at him. I don't know, he mumbled, his eyes lowered as he clenched his fists. Now that his eyes had been opened, Natsu felt an uneasy feeling welling up inside him. It pricked him in the chest and made looking Naruto in the eye seem impossible. He just wanted to curl up and be swallowed by the earth, disappear until everyone forgot about the incident. Shame, that was the emotion he was feeling. Naruto's eyes softened slightly toward his crazy friend before returning to their stern expression. Natsu needed this point to sink deep into his skull. You have a home you love, a guild you value, and a family you cherish. How can you revel in the destruction of other guilds and buildings when you've never experienced their pain? He questioned. Natsu winced. Whenever Naruto lectured him, he always managed to make Dragon Slayer feel much smaller than usual, and that said something, especially considering how vehemently Natsu could justify his actions. Each time they did this, Naruto would point out something Natsu wouldn't even think to relate to his own mess and keep hammering it home until he was absolutely certain Natsu understood the consequences of his actions. While watching the blonde discipline the Dragon Slayer from the sidelines, Lisanna, however, had an interested eye on the blonde girl Naruto had brought with him. She was beautiful, Lisanna assessed, in an earthy way. From what she could gather from observing her physique, she wasn't a combat-oriented mage like most of the fairy tale mages, but rather a support mage. Hearing the sound of the girl's keys as she moved, Lisanna raised an eyebrow in recognition. A celestial spirit mage. Was she thinking of joining Fairy Tail? Lucy, who was nervously standing to the side while Naruto continued talking to Natsu, noticed the girl who had been with the pink-haired Dragon Slayer watching her. Smiling nervously, Lucy waved to the white-haired beauty, who returned Lucy's smile. Feeling more confident knowing she hadn't been unkindly received, Lucy started walking toward her. Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Lucy, she greeted, extending her arm for a handshake. Lisanna smiled and shook Lucy's hand, giving it a soft but firm handshake. Nice to meet you too. My name is Lisanna Strauss, Naruto-sensei's third student. Lucy gasped in surprise. You're his student? Wow, you must be quite strong. She exclaimed. Leaning forward, she lowered her voice to whisper to Lisanna, is it true that Naruto-san is dating your sister Murahin? I heard some rumors in the Sorcerer's Weekly that they were going to start a relationship. Lisanna laughed, her eyes sparkling with excitement at the juicy gossip. They're not actually dating, but I think it's only a matter of time before they get together. Naruto-kun and Mirani have gotten along well since the day they met, so I'm not surprised the sorcerer would think that. Happy, who was being carried by Lisanna, chose that moment to make herself heard. Yes. Murahin loves Naruto. Lisanna touched her head. Now Happy, don't make fun of them. Anyway, Lucy, you wouldn't be interested in joining Fairy Tail, would you? She questioned. Ignoring the talking cat, Lucy smiled and nodded happily. Yes, of course. I bumped into Naruto-san at a magic shop, so I asked him if he could take me to Fairy Tail, and he said yes. I'm so excited about this and can't wait to meet the other guild members. She gushed. As the girls continued chattering away, Naruto glanced at them quickly before shaking his head. Look, just think for a bit, okay? I know you'd rather charge with your fist swinging, but sometimes it's worth thinking before you act, you know. With another small sigh, he started heading towards the train station. I just hope Taiya and Anko-chan manage to figure something out soon, he wondered, his footsteps catching the attention of the others. His mind was still focused on his own troubles, and he didn't make a sound as everyone rushed to catch up with him. Jiraiya hasn't reported anything unusual, but someone like Naraku obviously isn't going to sit idly by. Naraku would have to die soon. He was clearly a danger, but even he had his uses. There was also the problem with the Daybreak organization that Setsuna and Kurum had told him about. Several years had passed, but there hadn't been a trace of them, if they were even in Earthland to begin with. Then there was the trouble Axis had been causing him. I had a lot to do and not much time to work. Time skip. The train journey had been quite pleasant, with Naruto entertaining Lucy's various questions about Fairy Tail and its members, while Lisanna gently cradled Natsu, who was dry from motion sickness. They had been lucky to catch a train back to Magnolia quickly, as some required waiting up to an hour for the next one. Happy flew around their compartment, out of boredom or strange interest. Naruto wasn't sure. So, who's the strongest in the guild? Is it the master? Lucy asked, her eyes completely focused on Naruto. It had been happening for a while now, with Lucy asking him, Lisanna or Natsu questions, yet focusing entirely on him the whole time. Naruto shook his head. Not necessarily. There have been cases where guilds have S-class members or mages who are stronger than the guild masters. It's a common misconception that being the guild master equates to being the strongest in the guild, he explained. In Fairy Tail, almost everyone is below the master in terms of strength and power, Lisanna continued, drawing Lucy's attention. For both men and women, the title of strongest is up for grabs. For example, we have Titania Urza, Demon Murahin, the Trickster Queen Kana, and Demon King's Raven Setsuna. Each of these women qualifies for that title, but that makes it more difficult to judge effectively. Lucy blinked at that. She'd heard of the infamous Titania, the seductive demon, and even the Trickster Queen, but she couldn't quite place the face of the latest title holder. What do you mean it makes it harder? Shouldn't everyone fight and see who's left standing? she asked, simultaneously trying to recall who Lysana was referring to as the Demon King's crow. Lysana frowned, her arms gently rubbing Natsu's back as he glared at her. No, that wouldn't work. They all know each other so well they could predict each other's every move in their sleep. It also doesn't help that their skill sets give one an advantage over the other. For example, Urza specializes in magic and re-equip weaponry, which complement each other very well. Mirani's takeover magic, Satan's Soul, enhances her abilities several times over and allows her to dominate in close combat. When she's in that state, she's practically on top all the time, Lysana said. Naruto's laughter distracted them. That's not what I saw 2 nights ago, he muttered, just low enough that Natsu couldn't hear despite his enhanced hearing. Looking at Naruto strangely for a moment or two, Lysana shrugged it off and resumed her lecture. As I was saying, it would be too much if they didn't even have a decisive outcome. The most likely scenario would be that they would both succumb to exhaustion and leave the fight undecided once again. Now, in my honest opinion, Setsuna-chan should be the strongest, but she rejects the title for some reason. She's more versatile in combat than Mirani and Urza, she's smarter than Kana, and one of the few mages capable of keeping up with Naruto-sensei. Lucy gasped. What? She can even take on the Demon King. After all, everyone had heard of the Demon King's exploits. How he had sliced through several powerful dark guilds with nothing but clawed gauntlets and a charge of magical energy. He had come to the attention of the magic community after his S-class exam when he was 13, becoming an S-class mage on his first attempt and, according to rumors, defeating Gildert's Clive in combat, a feat very few could accomplish, especially at that age. Upon hearing that a fairy tale member was actually capable of meeting Naruto-san, the blonde paled considerably. He had been researching the various guilds, even Phantom Lord, to decide which one would be the best fit and had come across Fairy Tail's various exploits. Strong, overly enthusiastic and reckless, Fairy Tail had a less than attractive track record of destroying many things whenever they accepted a request. Add that to the news he'd heard about them always fighting, and he could see why he was so afraid. Lysana nodded, sending a mischievous smile down Naruto's face. Yeah, he's pretty strong. That's probably why he's his. A very precious person. Naruto chimed in gently, earning an annoyed glare from his student. He easily ignored it and glanced at his new classmate. Don't worry about Setsuna-chan, Lucy. He said, she may seem cold and quiet, but that's just how she is. Lysana puffed out her cheeks. You say that, but she's always so lively whenever you enter the picture, Naruto-sensei, you're a bad influence on people. A boisterous laugh burst from her mouth. So says the girl who knew more about Hex than even Mikao. How old were you then? 10, 11, 12. You were already corrupt when I joined, so blaming me for your perverted tendencies seems stupid. The conversation continued in this vein, with Naruto and Lysana recounting their respective exploits within the guild, while Lucy chimed in with any questions she had. The train journey soon ended, and before they knew it, they were standing at the gates of the famous guild in Magnolia. Standing before the tall doors, Lucy swallowed with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. Finally, after all these years, I'm finally here. Gripping the handle tightly, she opened the doors as Naruto, Lysana, Happy, and Natsu climbed in from the back. Stepping into the grand hall, a wide smile spread across her face. Fairy Tail was a sea of interaction. From every direction she turned, she could make out people laughing, talking, drinking, and basically interacting with each other. Her eyes widened when she spotted several famous mages. Kana Alberona, who was currently downing what had to be a gallon of alcohol in a single sitting, Grave Fullbuster, the only god slayer within the guild, and a solid contender for the title of strongest man in Fairy Tail. Even the well-known beast god Elfman was lounging in a nearby seat, casually chatting with Lysana and Natsu. In something like a drunken haze, Lucy spun her head around like a child in a new and exciting world, stumbling into the crowd. Naruto watched Lucy walk toward the others and shook his head in amusement. Lysana, he called out, catching the girl's attention, would you mind showing Lucy the strings? I have something to tell Master, and it's very important that he knows as soon as possible. Lysana smiled and nodded happily. No problem, Naruto-sensei. Thank you. Nodding gratefully, Naruto headed toward the steps leading to Makarov's office. As he quietly made his way through the crowd, he was greeted enthusiastically by his classmates and received more than a few claps as he passed them. Despite the pleasant smile on his face, Naruto sighed inwardly at the amount of attention he always received. How ironic, the very thing I longed for as a child is now the very thing that makes me uncomfortable. As they climbed the stairs, Naruto glanced in Kana's direction and caught the attention of the dark-haired beauty. Waving her cheerfully, Naruto smiled as she perked up, raising her half-empty beer bottle in a silent question. Nodding in response, Naruto continued on his way to Makarov's office. Makarov's office. Many years had passed since the arrival of Naruto Uzumaki and Setsuna Uchiha, and Makarov could honestly say that those were the most interesting years the guild had ever experienced. Of course, there were ups and downs throughout the years, especially with Laxus. The elderly guildmaster frowned as his mind drifted to his grandson once more. The report he had just read slipped from his grasp as his thoughts wandered elsewhere. Since that S-class exam, Laxus had become even more intolerable than ever. He only followed orders when absolutely necessary, spoke ill of everyone who wasn't an S-class mage, and rarely held back when bickering with other guild members. However, the most frequent problem was his incredibly passionate and unsettling rivalry with Naruto. Whenever they met, it could start with something simple, like a greeting, and the situation would escalate into a fight, though Laxus instigated most of the time. Makarov wasn't sure what to do about this complicated relationship, and with Gilderts away on his 100-year quest, he wasn't sure the guild could stop the two of them from doing so with full force. Where did all this begin? Was it Ivan's excommunication that triggered this change in Laxus, or had these feelings always been with him, hidden behind a wall? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock, and he instantly smiled. "Come in, Naruto, it's open," he called out. Who else knocked before entering his office? Most barged in without any announcement, and those who were polite only announced their presence when they were halfway into the room. As expected, the door opened to reveal Naruto. Upon entering the office, Naruto gave a lazy bow. "Hello, Jai-chan. Do you have a minute?" he asked. Makarov seemed slightly amused. "My son, if I didn't have time for you, I would have let you know the moment you knocked on my door." Naruto nodded once and sat down in the seat opposite Makarov. "Well, it turns out I ran into Layla Hertfilia's daughter today," he said, looking at Makarov, who was sitting upright, with interest. "If you recall, Layla was the wife of Jude Hertfilia, the current head of the powerful and corrupt Hertfilia Khazarn organization. From what my sources tell me, she sent out a request to several other guilds to find and retrieve her daughter." The look in his eyes sharpened. "She's offering 20 million jewels as a reward, as well as some rare magical items." Makarov narrowed his eyes. "So that's why she sent her subpoena to inform me about Ms. Lucy, so you're saying that?" "Yes." With a request to return Lucy Hertfilia a fairy tale to her father circulating among various guilds, it's highly likely that rival guilds will intensify their efforts to extract their pound of flesh from us, especially Phantom Lord, he said. Crossing his arms, Naruto continued, "It's highly likely they'll attack us with everything they've got and claim it as a necessary action to fulfill the request. Not only would we dethrone them from their position as the strongest guild, but having Lucy among us would give us a huge pool of resources to exploit." Makarov frowned. "That's truly worrying. If Oze attacks us, he could spin a story that would make us look bad, something the Magic Council would swallow whole. We also can't abandon this girl Lucy. She sought us out, has a genuine desire to join us, and could be a great addition to the family." He grumbled, wondering why all these problems seemed to befall his guild. Naruto nodded and stood up. "Although I'm sure we have some time before that happens, it wouldn't hurt to think about countermeasures against an attack." Turning around, the blond man left the office, leaving Makarov alone to ponder this new development. Guild Hall. Naruto sat at the bar with a beer in his hand, listening to Kana talk about her day and the various interesting things that had happened at the guild while he was away. As of this moment, Laxus and his Thunder God tribe were off on one of the most difficult S-class missions. Urza had left on a request just a day after him, and Mikao hadn't yet returned from his most recent job request. "Really? I thought I'd be back by now," Naruto said, taking a big swig of beer. He grimaced at the taste, but then downed another glass. Anna shrugged in response, her jug of alcohol right beside her as she took deep swigs. "He's usually on time with his returns, so it's strange that he hasn't come back." She fixed him with a worried look. "Romeo is really worried about his father, and the kids at his school aren't making things any easier for him." Naruto's expression tightened, but he simply continued drinking. Scaring a few preteens to death would send the wrong kind of message to civilians and also make him a hypocrite in Natsu's eyes. "So, are you busy tonight?" he asked, looking her in the eye. Anna hummed to herself, trying not to show how pleased she was with the question and the likely follow-up. "No, I'm ready for next month, so I really don't need to go to job applications." "Why?" Naruto gave her an expressionless look. "You should know by now that I'm asking you out on a date. It's been a while since you and I had some fun alone together, without any worries and nobody breathing down our necks," Naruto said, leaning back in his seat. Anna smiled mischievously in their direction. "Goodness, you're honest about what you want. What would Setsuna-chan say if she heard her S-class lover saying these things?" she teased. They both burst out laughing at that. "Most likely, she'll tell me to have a good time and then make something special for dinner when I get back." Naruto returned, placing his empty glass on the wooden counter. As he approached Kana, Naruto gently took her hands and began to play with them. It was something he did unconsciously, a habit from one of the many shinobi he had absorbed but could barely remember. Murahan and Kana might tease him about it, but he could tell they enjoyed his ministrations too. Anna smiled at him, enjoying the tender sensation of his hands as they reached out and touched hers. "Well, I guess I could, but can we reschedule it for 3 days from now?" she asked, her eyes dancing with delight at how adorable Naruto was looking at that moment. Naruto tilted his head, the action so reminiscent of a dog that Kana had to suppress the urge to squeal. "Why, is something wrong?" she asked. Kana nodded. "Yes, the church I was staying with is throwing a birthday party for the twins, Mika and Sami. Since I've known them for quite some time, I decided to catch up by attending. It's happening tonight, and I have some experiments and errands to run tomorrow, so the day after tomorrow is the closest free day I have." Naruto clicked his tongue. "Damn, and I was hoping to spend more time with you before." Running a hand through his hair, he reached for another glass. "Oh well, nothing I can blame you for." Getting himself another generous pour of beer, Naruto raised his glass once more. "Cheers." Skip the time, the next day. The day had started as usual, with Naruto waking up early and heading straight to the guild to take advantage of any interesting job requests he could find. Setsuna had gone off to an S-class job while he was gone, and his place felt strangely dull without her around. Upon entering his personal study, Naruto walked to a section of the wall and traced an intricate symbol on the side. Instantly, the illusion vanished, and he was confronted by the sight of 4 blades proudly displayed on wooden shelves. Kubikaribachu, Samehada, Tetsuseiga, and Bakuseiga. 2 forged from his own fangs, the other 2 relics from his past. Before he could make a move, a deep masculine voice growled. "Naruto-sama, why didn't you call me last month? Even that shark bitch got a turn, and she can't kill me no matter what." Another voice spoke, calm and colder than ice. "Silence, Throatblade. Naruto-sama has no need to force you, nor should you presume that your bloodlust should supersede his own reasons for choosing which of us accompanies him." Bakuseiga's regal cold voice was, surprisingly, feminine. It reminded him somewhat of Setsuna and Kuram's voices, so he had a tendency to engage in conversations just to hear her speak. Samehada writhed in her position, her convulsions the only indication of her enjoyment. "Tell him, Blast Fang. Show him that girls can kick ass." Naruto suppressed the sigh that escaped him and disengaged from the next argument between their swords. After constant exposure to his powerful chakra, Kubikirabacho had evolved like Samehada. It had gained the ability to absorb an endless amount of blood from those it cut, and in addition to using the iron to repair itself, it could also release the excess blood as razor-sharp projectiles that could pierce through almost anything. It had gained sentience, somehow adopting Mamichi's abuser's attitude a fitting course of action, he supposed. His other 2 blades, Bakuseiga and Tetsuseiga, were special, even for Naruto. Bakuseiga was so powerful that he had very few opportunities to use it in combat. Its energy blasts also acted as a very potent poison, and the effect could spread through contact. Tetsuseiga, the last masculine sword, was the fang of destruction. Even the amount of damage a Biju-Udama could inflict was rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, by the destruction his second fang could unleash. Before the argument could escalate further, Naruto swiftly drew Bakuseiga and quickly sealed the blades once more, ignoring the other's complaints. As they vanished into the wall, he glanced at Bakuseiga and smiled. Unsheathing it, Naruto cast a practiced eye over its shape and grinned wickedly. "This might look a bit old-fashioned, but I must say I've never seen a sword that embodies the concept of perfection and lethality." Bakuseiga's sword flashed briefly as she rose to his praise. "It shouldn't be a surprise, though your words are appreciated, Naruto-sama. Well, I am curious why you chose me this time. I believe you have other matters to attend to." "You're absolutely right, my dear," he murmured. Expertly wrapping her up, Naruto tied her to his back and headed toward the guild. Within minutes, he was standing in front of the guild doors. As he entered the guild hall, a glimpse of beautiful white hair brought a smile to his face. Stealthily hidden in a corner of the room, Naruto peeked out slightly to see the person and smiled. Murahin had returned. The Piccolo 16. Celestial Spirit Mage, Lullaby and a Date. Part 3. Chapter 16. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto, Fairy Tail, or any other anime or manga that appear in this fanfic. If I did, I would have kept Jelil as the villain and had Naruto marry Urza sometime before the Tenru Island arc, though that might not happen in this fic. Last time. Within minutes, he was standing in front of the guild doors. As he entered the guild hall, a glimpse of beautiful white hair brought a smile to his face. Stealthily hidden in a corner of the room, Naruto peeked out slightly to see the person and smiled. Murahin had returned. Seeing the distinctive white hair of the Strauss siblings, Naruto crouched down and remained out of sight as he plotted a surprise for her. Peeking out from behind the large table propped against the corner of the room, his eyes gleamed mischievously when he spotted Murahin deep in conversation with her younger sister. "Oh, this is going to be good." Flashing through 3 hand seals, Naruto cast the Misegakure no Jutsu, concealed camouflage technique, upon himself. His form shifted, using his chakra to transform his body into a transparent being. His clothes, sword, and scent vanished, and the jutsu ended. Turning around, Naruto nodded contentedly before emerging from his hiding place. Since it was still quite early in the morning, around 6 o'clock, there were only a few people inside the guild hall. I could see Gray at the far end of the room talking to the elderly fire mage Mikao, unconsciously shaping ice sculptures with his hands, though he was clearly paying more attention to the conversation. As the conversation went on, the sculptures would change. One minute there resembled Elfman's hulking form, the next it was Urza dressed in her Heaven's Wheel armor. Naruto smiled at that. Gray was like a much lighter version of Sasuke. What could the Uchiha have been like if he hadn't been so obsessed with revenge? He took the various Hyoten techniques that Naruto had shown him quite well. He didn't master them as quickly as Sasuke could, but he was very thorough in learning everything about the technique's weaknesses, strengths, and methods for improvement. He was definitely one of the best students Naruto had. With his magical ability. Her eyes met the sound of laughter in the northeast corner of the room. The laughter came from Kana, who already had a mug of beer in her hand and was chatting animatedly with one of the new recruits, a woman named Biska Mulin. She was a young woman with long, straight green hair that reached her lower back, with a few long strands framing her face. She had purplish-brown eyes and was always seen wearing red lipstick. She had a very curvaceous figure and wore a Western-style hat that was always visible on her head, a light polka-dotted scarf, and a pair of reddish-brown boots. Her body was covered by a short, strapless one-piece dress decorated with spiral patterns with darker, striped edges. From what he'd gathered from their brief interactions, as well as Kana's input, she seemed to be a soft-spoken young woman. The only times he'd seen her lively and active were when she was practicing her weapon magic and when she and Kana were hanging out. He'd caught her glancing at him a few times, but nothing came of it, so he didn't mind. A smile stretched across his face as a very lustful idea occurred to him. Bakuseiga, who was still tied to his side and currently synchronized with him, sighed deeply. Naruto-sama, well, it's not my place to criticize your behavior, don't you think you're acting more perverted than ever? What you're planning seems more appropriate for a man who thinks with his other head, as opposed to one like you. Naruto gently stroked his sheath, making sure to move and avoid the people slowly but surely entering the guild. A quick glance confirmed that Lisana and Murahin were still deep in conversation, though they had moved toward the bar. I'm sorry if I come across as a pervert, but you have to remember I inherited a hell of a libido from everyone I knew besides. I don't intend to take this past second base, he said, somewhat cheekily. He began moving toward the two of them, stealthily passing by the people who moved in his direction and got in his way. In a few moments, he was standing directly behind the green-haired beauty, who was laughing at a joke Kana had just told her. Careful not to let her hair touch her bare skin, Naruto leaned forward until he had a clear view of her impressive cleavage. Damn, they're almost as big as Urza's, he thought, watching them bounce and jiggle as she moved. Naruto-sama, are you really going to do this? Bakuseiga already seemed resigned to the fact that her master was going to subject the young woman to a lustful prank, but she still made a half-hearted attempt to stop him. What if you get caught and exposed? Naruto rubbed his chin as he leaned forward to look at her breasts from different angles. Yes, I'm really going to do it. No, I won't get caught or exposed, and I'll let her know I have an escape plan in case I do get caught. Now, would you mind being quiet for a moment? His eyes spiraled toward the Sharingan, which he then proceeded to use like a camera. Every time Biska struck an unintentionally hexy pose, his eyes captured the moment and stored it in his mind forever. Feeling a little bold and mischievous, Naruto silently removed his glove and ran his hand up her right arm. She gasped in surprise, nearly spilling her teacup and making her breasts bounce even more. The moment was captured by his eyes, which lingered on her chest and replayed in slow motion in his mind. Ana had just finished her mug of beer when her companion straightened up and turned her head to her side. Raising an eyebrow, the brunette tilted her head curiously. Something wrong, Biska? Biska rubbed her arm nervously, still looking uneasy. I feel something touching me. I'm sure it's just my imagination, probably just the breeze, she said, giving Kana an unconvincing smile. That response caused Naruto to smile darkly beneath his mask. Oh. I'd love to keep toying with her, but I have a hexy demon to capture shadow clone jutsu. Half a dozen clones appeared at his side, all of them also enveloped under the effects of the demon world jutsu. Each of them gave him a knowing bow and joined the unconscious woman. I couldn't wait for them to dissipate and show the results. Heading towards the bar, the still invisible shinobi slipped through the growing crowd and positioned herself directly behind the takeover mage, who was sitting on the farthest stool in the guild hall with his sister. Murahin listened intently as Lisana spoke about the training methods she had put her group through and how they were coping. She hadn't changed much. She still wore her usual attire, though a noticeable choker was draped around her neck. Her body had become even more curvaceous and feminine, much like most of the other women in the guild. As for her personality, it had mellowed over the years and she was a somewhat toned-down version of herself. She could be quite cheerful and sweet with those close to her heart, but she could be rather abrasive with those she didn't know well or didn't like. Her rivalry with Urza remained the same, bringing out flashes of her old personality as they squabbled around the guild, but one could see that it was less intense than when they were children. Leaning toward her, Naruto's hands moved in anticipation. Striking with the speed of a viper, Naruto's hands shot forward and grasped Murahen's large breasts. Holding them firmly, Naruto took half a second to admire once more the astonishingly soft yet perky breasts in his palm. Despite having done more naughty and perverse things to them, every time he patted those magnificent breasts, he felt a certain thrill from the fact that he was the one who had her. To be with her. That she had chosen him above all others to undress. The moment passed quickly, and knowing he only had another second to act, he pinched her nipples. Normally this wouldn't affect her, but their dorm activities last time had lasted almost all day. Naruto discerned that Murahen had discharged approximately a liter of bodily fluids through Hex. Her body had become extremely sensitive as a result of a particular Hex will technique Kakashi had learned, and the effects wouldn't wear off until tonight. His reaction did not disappoint. "Hiya. Mirani," Lysana cried, surprised by her story at her sister's sudden howl. Naruto chuckled as he released his camouflage jutsu, appearing out of nowhere like a chameleon behind the startled siblings. "Hey Mira, it's been a while." When she looked up at him, her cheeks flushed, covering her chest as if she were naked for all to see, he raised an eyebrow. "Ara. You look pretty upset, Mira-chan, did something go wrong with your job application?" "Shut up, Baka Naruto." He dodged the blow with which she had struck, noticing that she had only half-heartedly attacked, and amusement bubbled within him. Grabbing her arm before she could retract it, he took advantage of her surprise and pulled her toward him. She was knocked out of her seat and bumped against his chest. His arms wrapped around her in a surprise hug, pressing her smaller body tightly against his with puppy dog excitement. "Mira-chan, I missed you so much." He cried, rubbing himself against her like a dog. Murahen punched his chest, her cheeks still flushed with embarrassment. "Maybe if you'd been quicker with that job application, you could have come with me," she declared, surrendering to his embrace and sliding her own arms around him. She tried to deny it, but she knew she missed him too. The commute to and from Balsam Village had been terribly dull and frustrating because she'd been assaulted by other men who thought she was an easy pick when all she wanted was to rest and hurry home. She dealt with them, though she refrained from using any force. A concentrated burst of murderous intent upon them left them thoroughly disturbed and afraid to approach her again. She tightened her grip around him as his scent wafted around her. It smelled pleasant and minty, as if he'd splashed on some cologne before arriving. "What would you do without me?" She chuckled, burying herself against him. He gently ran his hands through her hair, remarking on its silkiness once more. "Crawl to a corner and cry until you come looking for me," he replied, his voice low and gentle. He buried his face in her soft hair and inhaled her scent, feeling as though he could spend the rest of the day simply enveloping her. For him, that would be more satisfying than Hex alone, though combining this with Hex definitely topped the list. "Gosh, get a room already," Lysana cried, bravely trying to avoid eye contact with the couple. However, the red blotch on her cheeks diminished the effect of the disgusted little sister act she was trying to put on. The scene was far too intimate for her tastes. There was nothing Hexwell about their embrace, but the intensity of their display made her feel like a voyeur. Seeing them happy with each other, simply by being in each other's presence, was something she felt was too intimate for her to witness. Unfortunately, Naruto lifted his head from Murahen's soft, wonderful body to look questioningly at Lysana. "Haven't you and Natsu gotten past this stage yet? You seemed pretty comfortable giving Harjan a handjob on the way there, so why are you embarrassed to hug him?" The question was phrased far too innocently to be anything but a joke. As expected, Murahen turned her head toward Lysana in shock as the younger sister cursed her innocently, blinking sensei. "Revenge is a bitch, isn't it, Lysana? You did what to Natsu?" Murahen whispered furiously, quickly scanning the guild hall for the pink-haired dragon slayer. Frowning at the lack of sign of the man, she pulled away from her lover and turned her stormy blue eyes toward Lysana, placing her hands on her hips. "Explain, my dear sister, how long has this been going on, and why have you been engaging in these activities when you're clearly not ready for them?" she asked quietly, her eyes flashing slightly with anger. "Mirani, I can explain," Lysana said, raising her hands to try and appease her older sister. Throwing a dirty look at Naruto, who only waved cheerfully from behind Mira, she hurriedly began to defend her case. "I know it sounds weird, but we haven't really gone beyond kissing and a little touching. When we were traveling to Harjan, I had a particularly naughty book on me." Her voice had dropped in volume as she nervously poked her fingers out, the blush on her cheeks deepening with the admission. "And I kind of sort of got a little turned on by the contents. Gods, the cross-examination was so embarrassing. damn you, Naruto-sensei. I hope you have a horrible box of blue balls. I know, I hear you loud and clear every night when you read one of those books and get all emotional. Murahin said tersely, earning an embarrassed squeal from Lisana. Mira tilted her head, did you think I wouldn't find out? You're not exactly quiet when you come in, you know. What? Standing aside and watching her get dressed, Naruto smiled at the interaction. Despite her anger, she still managed to project that maternal feeling many mature women possess even after recently reaching adulthood. A strange pull in his chest developed during the scene. As he continued to watch her, the feeling grew stronger. Closing his eyes, he pictured a slightly older Murahin speaking sternly to a white-haired young man who looked displeased and embarrassed by the reprimand. She wore a sleeveless ankle-length maroon dress with a pleated skirt. The bodice was adorned with a large pink bow, and similarly colored embellishments framed the rather wide neckline, acted as straps, and wrapped around the waist. She also wore high heels that matched her dress, a small chain necklace with an attached oval blue gem, and a white floral bracelet encircling her right wrist. The young man was quite muscular, though his body appeared slender, much like Naruto's physique. He wore a long, black, purple and red coat with fairy tale insignias sewn onto both shoulders. He also wore a red zip-up hoodie vest under the coat, a navy blue shirt underneath that, and a pair of dark blue pants. He had neatly styled white hair and blue eyes, similar to Murahin's and the other Strauss siblings. Mira sighed resignedly and hugged the man, who was acting embarrassed by the gesture. As any other son would. The imagined scene made his heart swell with something. He wasn't sure what it was. Was it longing? Perhaps nostalgia. He could no longer put his finger on how he felt about having a family. On the one hand, it was something he had always longed for since childhood. Being an only child, he had always yearned for a large family and the chance to raise a child. Now, armed with the memories and tricks of over 100 capable parents, he was fairly confident in his ability to be a good father. However, any of his children would be targeted as a source of power. He wasn't entirely certain, but he suspected that each and every one of the children he fathered would inherit a significant portion of his powers. If they inherited the most dangerous bloodlines he possessed, the Magic Council and several others would turn their covetous eyes upon his family. If that were to happen, the children's lives would always be marked by paranoia, and they would rarely find happiness. I hated that. Even so, when he opened his eyes, he recognized one fact. She would be a good mother someday. The good thing is that Mikao and Wakaba aren't here, he thought, narrowing his eyes at the thought of the two older mages. Since Murahin had grown into a dazzling young woman, they somehow got the impression that they could now touch the person who had managed to intimidate them when she was a child. Naruto didn't really find fault with part of his reasoning. Unlike before, when they saw her as a child or an annoying little sister, now they saw her as a dazzling young woman and simply acted on their natural instinct to procreate. Naruto always responded with his instinct to protect his pack. Violently. Seeing his change in mood, Murahin paused her little lecture long enough to take hold of his shoulders and plant a chaste kiss on his cheek. She wasn't sure what was bothering him, but she knew him well enough to know that he calmed down whenever she, Kana, or Setsuna pecked his cheek. Returning to punishing her little sister, her mind drifted back to pondering the relationship between her rival and her lover. Having been Urza's friend for most of her life, Mira was one of the few people in the guild who had any insight into the S-class mage's dark past. From what Urza had told her, and what she had managed to piece together on her own and with the master, Murahin had tentatively concluded that Urza had once been in love with, or at least had some attraction to, the boy, and had been harshly rejected. There were also some hints that she had been tortured, as evidenced by her implanted right eye, as well as the early bouts of fear she experienced whenever she saw a whip upon arriving at the guild. With all those experiences, it was no wonder she continued to wear that armor of hers. It was her coping mechanism, something that made her feel safe even when she didn't need it, like when she went to sleep. Of course, Setsuna, Kana and Mira had noticed when the Fairy Queen began to see the Demon King in a romantic light. Interestingly, it all started with one of her usual peaks. Urza had challenged Naruto once again, something many believed Natsu had stolen from her, and they had fought just a few feet from the guild. Urza hadn't said anything about it, though she turned an interesting shade of red along with surprisingly sweet behavior, but it was obvious that something had shifted in her perception of the strange SS-class mage. Murahin and Kana believed that something happened that afternoon to open Urza's eyes to the possibility of being with Naruto. Setsuna, on the other hand, was of the opinion that Urza had always been captivated and affectionate towards Naruto, and that what happened that day only made it so that she could finally admit what she felt for him. From then on, it became a little more obvious that she saw him as someone dear to her. Whenever she made a job request that required more manpower than she could provide, he was always the first to ask her to accompany him. Whenever she had a burden to lift from her chest, Naruto would take her for a walk and let her see a little of his heart. That wasn't to say he was the only one she opened up to, but he was practically the only man her age who let her guard down. Every compliment he gave, which was something he rarely did, she would smile briefly and savor. It was curious how he was somehow encouraging his rival to admit his feelings for his lover, though it also came down to his inner romantic side, foaming at the mouth to bring them together. Wham! Snowman with ice. Wham! Shit-eater who grapes donkeys. Wham! What the hell are you saying, brother? Wham! You heard me, you damn marshmallow toaster. Wham! The sounds of fists slicing through flesh echoed through the hall, and many eyes turned to find the source. In the center of the guild, Natsu and Gray clashed. Members of the crowd cheered them on, watching intently as the two battled each other, with Gray using the Goken fighting style to pummel his opponent, while Natsu lashed out with his own unique street fighting style and used his flames to amplify the power of his blows. Naruto sighed wearily at the daily scene. Why couldn't they get along? He opened one eye, saw the various flaws they both had in their respective fighting styles, and thought of several possible ways to correct them. It was only after Natsu punched Gray in the face, sending him back a few inches, that he remembered the task he had made a mental note to do. I'd have to give Natsu a little lecture about his adult escapades. He and Lisana were of legal age, yes, but that didn't mean they were ready for the adult-oriented activities available. Sure, he'd slept with Murahan, Kana and Satsuna, but they were at least 2 years older than the couple and had taken their relationship pretty slowly. He didn't want his mistress to become an aunt before she was ready, damn it. What's going on here? Turning toward the familiar voice, Naruto smiled at Lucy in amazement and waved. She was wearing a cute red tank top that did a good job of accentuating her ample chest, a short pink skirt that reached her thighs, and her custom belt around her waist. She seemed to have abandoned her whip, and the golden fairy tale mark on the back of her right hand shone proudly in the light. This is something you'll have to get used to in this industry. At that moment, just as the fight was about to escalate rapidly to include the other guild members, a cry of warning and fear echoed through the hall. Hey, you bitches. Clear the area. Urza's in your way. Loke, the scout of the time, seemed to have seen the face of hell and wanted nothing to do with it. He was one of the new recruits, a skilled practitioner of ring magic. Interestingly, Loke had been voted the third most desirable man in Sorcerer magazine's The Wizard I'd Like to Be My Boyfriend ranking, while second and first place went to Seagrain, one of the youngest and most charismatic members of the Magic Council, and Naruto, respectively. He had complained about this, claiming that he was actually more handsome than the Demon King and deserved a higher ranking. To settle the dispute, 2 reporters from Sorcerer magazine arrived to judge and determine who was the most handsome. Loke had been very confident of his victory and quickly identified the 2 judges. They had awarded him an overall score of 9.5, something he believed Naruto couldn't possibly surpass. All Naruto did was remove his mask and the women were knocked unconscious by nosebleeds. The next problem was a photo of Naruto with part of his mask removed, which upset the spectators. The sales they made with that song would forever be their best record to date. Loke and almost every other man who read that song felt their spirits crushed. The sheer volume of activity that followed the declaration could only be best described as chaos. The people in the hall were frozen in shock, obviously not expecting the disciplinarian of the guild to return so soon. Natsu and Gray were the worst offenders. They were comically frozen in place, Natsu's fist raised and Gray's foot about to fly loose. When everyone's brains finally processed the situation, pandemonium erupted. Natsu and Gray simultaneously stormed out of the guild, their reasons to finally defeat Urza and witness her humiliation, respectively. As everyone else scrambled to get into the best possible shape, the sounds of shouts and muffled blows amidst the commotion spurred everyone on to move faster. Moments later, the guild hall was filled with tense silence, and many people grew nervous at the ominous echo of her footsteps as she approached the doors. Finally, after a few anxious moments, the doors burst open and Urza Scarlet entered the guild. Like everyone in the guild, Urza had changed over the years. She had grown into a very beautiful woman. She had a slender figure that Naruto would describe as incredible, and like most of the women in the guild, she had developed positively large casual breasts, as well as an attractive backside. She had grown her hair out at some point during the years, though it probably started when he let her know that he preferred women with long hair. Her most common outfit consisted of armor custom made by the Heart Crew's blacksmiths, a blue skirt and black boots. Held in his hands, barely able to pass unobstructed through the doors, was an enormous horn. It closely resembled a dragon's claw, though it had been adorned with all manner of jewels and decorative materials. Lucy stared in disbelief at the nonchalance with which the Redeed carried the enormous horn. It was one thing to hear about the incredible feats each of Fairy Tail's top wizards had accomplished over the years, but to see Titania Urza wielding that massive thing as if it were a pen, without even using her magical armor to enhance her abilities, was breathtaking. That's when she decided Urza would be her role model. Sure, she looked up to Marahin and, to a lesser extent, Kana, but Urza embodied the very concept of a female mage. She was powerful, strong, incredibly responsible and courteous, effortlessly beautiful and hexy. She was like a celestial being. Naruto raised an eyebrow the size of the horn, while Marahin smiled happily at her rival. If a third party, one not affiliated with Fairy Tail, had been asked to describe the relationship the two had forged in that exchange, many would have described them as close friends. Welcome back, Urza. Master is away on an emergency meeting and won't be back for another 3 days or so, she replied. Urza frowned briefly. I see. I was hoping to catch him before he got busy, but unfortunately. As she placed the gigantic speaker on the floor, a loud booming sound echoed through the guild hall. Some of the newer members, including Lucy, gasped at its estimated weight. Brushing a speck of dirt from the greaves on her shoulders, Urza turned to face the crowd and sighed wearily. I was looking forward to disciplining you all when I got back, but something came up, so I'll make sure to do it when I return from that. At her words, all the men except Naruto and Elfman clutched their groins in pain, their faces pale, while some of the girls took a few steps back, their expressions clearly uneasy. Lucy watched the crowd's reaction with curiosity, wondering why Urza Scarlet had been able to frighten the members of one of the strongest guilds so easily. Turning to Naruto, her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Naruto-san, why is everyone so afraid of him? I mean, he's certainly one of the strongest mages in the guild, but they all seem a little more nervous than usual. Naruto shrugged. She has a reputation for being strict. Some of her punishments can be quite harsh. It also helps that Kurum found her interesting enough to teach. From what he'd heard, Kurum had apparently taught Urza a few things, though exactly what she'd taught her wasn't yet clear to him. Satisfied with instilling a sense of awe in them, Urza turned to Naruto and stepped forward to greet him. So you're finally back, huh? I heard about your little detour to Harjan. She smiled as he squirmed, crossing his arms as she stopped in front of him. It was Natsu's fault, damn it. Makarov won't be happy, but he won't refuse to pay for the damage done to the city. He leaned against the wall and looked at her with interest. How did the job application go? Urza grimaced and shifted her weight to the other foot. Actually, I'm not lucky enough to even begin telling that story. Look, are you busy for the rest of the day? Marahin frowned. I'm sorry, but I plan to rest today and then maybe spend some time with Naruto tomorrow. Why, do you need help with an application? Something like that, Urza replied vaguely. There's something I wanted to discuss with Naruto and Master, but I guess I'll have to deal with you alone. Somehow, Naruto got the feeling she was strangely pleased to have to work on it alone with him. He had a feeling he might miss his date with Kana after all. Ashibana town. Within the streets of Ashibana, a young woman walked with an excited spring in her step. As she moved, her bright red hair flowed in the air like a magnificent mane in the sun. I wonder if Leader Sama would mind if I had a little fun here before going after the objective. Of course, that would depend on whether the wizards of Eisenwald live to see the next day. After all, you don't anger the Blood Angel, and you get away with it. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.